I feel like a DJ or something with this on. Can everyone please take your seats so we can begin? I may be the only one not in my seat. All right, I will now begin with attendance. Convoy, Kubler, Rana, Hughes, Electricon, Lapal, Bird, Porcello, Conrad, Valverde, Johnny, Dinkaloo, Riff, Bayanima, Azimi, Nahar, Alar, Bayraktar, Derir, Ali, Valkaran, Burr, Hard, Caruso, Chow, Ignato, Dangavelli, Global, Karis, Kennedy, Kundu, Langer, Lanza, Lavoy, Lemoyne, Michael, Murray, Norris, Auger, Parker, Puglisi, Romanev, Siddiqui, Sponzo, Sullivan, Zerowitz, Wang. I checked you out. Because I forgot to put it on the agenda, I'd like to move to add public comment by unanimous consent. All right, so ordered. I'll start with President Convoy.
Hey guys, so you sent out this legislation from Bennett about election oversight policies. After hearing out a lot of different concerns, and definitely a lot of interest about this and the solution, we just talked, Adam and myself talked to EOC, and decided that we would probably take it off as a friendly for tonight, but it would be in the structural ad hoc charge to discuss it, and then it would be further discussed. So definitely, it's not off the table, but I just wanted to give you a Oh, the execution of lawyers. I'm sorry, no, we're just not doing elections. No. So, yeah, I just wanted to, I thought it was fair that I gave you guys that preface. Yeah, and that the reasoning was for the process, because after discussing it, we talked about how we wanted more to be put into it. We wanted to be including all of the constitutional changes. Thank you.
Senator Sorowitz.
Good evening, members of student government, advisors, and guests. Earlier this week, I emailed our awesome speaker, Colin, and informed him that I would not be able to stay for tonight's Senate session. I'll be joining about 20 other UConn student veterans to take part in a free dinner at Applebee's. But before I rudely bail on the Senate Assembly, I'd like to just take a minute to tell you why. So, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, in 1918, major hostilities were ended in World War I, and an armistice between the Allies and Germans went into effect. This day became known as Armistice Day. President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed that it should be observed in the U.S. for the first time in 1919. In 1938, a congressional act made the 11th of November a legal holiday called Armistice Day. In 1954, Armistice Day was changed to Veterans Day to encourage the honoring of all veterans, alive and dead. Memorial Day continues to be a day designated to remembering those who died while serving in the armed forces. On Veterans Day, non-essential federal government offices are closed. No mail is delivered. All federal workers are paid for the holiday. UConn holds an annual ceremony which was attended today by members of the university, community, military, Lieutenant Christy Iglaski, class of 2009, is currently serving in Kosovo. Her younger brother, First Lieutenant Scott Iglaski, class of 2012, currently is serving in Kabul, Afghanistan. Today, let us thank them and others for answering the call that we, the American people, asked of them. And happy Veterans Day.
Well, on the behalf of USG, thank you, Senator Surowitz, for your service, and have fun at Applebee's.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to be... Oh, okay. Yes, Kevin Alvarez.
Didn't even raise my hand. Hi, this is very, very strange for me, and many of you don't know who I am probably. I used to have Colin's job. He is much, much nicer about it than I was. But so I came today because I wanted the opportunity to speak on behalf of myself for the first time, rather than for constituents or for this organization. Because it was brought to my attention the legislation coming up for tonight, and I had a lot of concerns about it. And even if it's tabled or brought up in another committee or something like that, I just wanted to express my views and express my concerns regarding it. And so at the very basis for anybody who read the legislation that was sent out to you, it includes, it's an act concerning the undergraduate student election and representation policies. And it was brought by the Elections Oversight Committee, and it basically includes generally a hodgepodge of different initiatives and things all to do with voting, but very little to do with elections as a whole, particularly elections policies. The first be it enacted clause, for those of you looking at it, or who have it, it basically adopts the election policies that the committee is proposing. And with that, that's fine. That's what should be in legislation. Everything else is not supposed to be there. Because legislation is things like acts or resolutions. Legislation is not amending your bylaws, and it is not amending your constitution. Those are not pieces of legislation. They do not go to the president, because you have to approve them by 2/3 vote. So basically, if you voted on this to begin with right now, it wouldn't really work, because one only needs to meet 50% plus one threshold, and the other has to meet a 2/3 threshold. Actually, even different thresholds between bylaws and constitutional amendments in a certain way. So that was first my concern. This legislation should not be voted on in its current form. And I ask, many of you are my representatives, if you're a CLAS senator or the senator from Northwest, which I believe you are, please, yeah, that's still my word, thank you. I just ask you to split the question and remove anything that has to do with bylaws or the Constitution, because it should not be in a piece of legislation. Further, basically the way this is all being brought about is kind of folly, because the EOC stands for Elections Oversight Committee. Voting rights for ex officio members has nothing to do with elections, because they are, by definition, not elected. And so for the future, when this committee, the structuring committee, what have you, is going over these aspects of USG policy, and particularly considering voting rights, I would say that the amendment that they're currently working on actually serves more to disadvantage minority populations than it does to give them greater representation. And it does so by basically limiting it to anybody that the president knows personally, or that is heavily involved in a cultural sense. But that doesn't actually mean that they represent the cultural group as a whole. Senators aren't designed and aren't supposed to do that. They are designed to care about their interests and to engage with those communities, but they are not representative bodies of those communities. So members of the student body get to choose their representatives, get to choose who is going to spend their money, who's going to take positions for them, and who's going to fight for them. And the student body should maintain that ability. And I actually wrote down a few notes, if the speaker will allow me to pull out my phone. Lovely. Sorry, I'm going to probably talk for a bit of time. But so, an example that I would like to use, Tyler is the representative from the Rainbow Center, and he does a great job at that. But I'm a gay member of the student body. He doesn't represent me directly. Not anymore. He was formerly. I didn't realize that you changed it. For like 2 different seats, obviously. But so he used to be Rainbow Center representative, and he didn't represent me. He represented the Rainbow Center. So the population fell into the category of LGBTQ+, aren't represented by that senator itself. They're represented by their ability to vote and vote for all of you who are elected representatives. And so the idea that we would have voting members of a legislative body that are not elected is frankly one strange in the context of any global legislative body. It doesn't really exist except for in the House of Lords where they're like bishops from the Anglican Church. And the House of Lords doesn't have power in general. So it would not only be a very, very strange thing, it would be a very undemocratic and unrepresentative thing. And so, let me see. But the larger point of it that I touched very briefly on before, it only allows for representation of certain people within those groups. Only people that are well connected with those senators or well connected with the president. And which the Senate, though you should always be engaging with candidates who are appointed and asking questions, not necessarily always will. And so going into future generations, that is not a good fail-safe against these people. So against bad candidates or unrepresentative candidates obtaining voting rights without the consent of their constituents. Also, this legislation has very, very good intentions. And the idea behind it is to try to represent minority groups better. However, ultimately it comes out as incredibly condescending when you actually consider it, because it puts a greater burden onto minority representatives, while also saying that they are not capable of being elected themselves. Whereas a better solution to this problem would be reinstating multiculturalism and diversity seats, which existed my freshman year, where there were 5 of them, and students from all over the campus could run for those seats. And the student body would get to choose who properly represented them. And so that is the much better course of action for this. Anything else, in general, is kind of pandering, and it's bad pandering because it does a disservice to minority students. Also, again, with constitutional amendments, you shouldn't be considering them lightly. They shouldn't be thrown in with an overall piece of legislation to do with election policies. Constitutional amendments should come up every 4 years as it's designed in the Constitution through a committee designed to look at the organization as a whole and restructuring. So basically, I have a whole range of problems with this, and I would strongly advise and ask my representatives to not let it go forward because it does a disservice to the minority students of this campus and students as a whole, and the democratic values that this body is designed to hold. So that's my little spiel on that. I would also say, and this is not related, but you have 6 members of your judiciary, and that's unconstitutional, and I don't know why no one's told you that yet, but it's by design not allowed. Thought I should bring attention to it. But I hope you all have a wonderful evening. This has been fun. I hope you all have a great debate. And actually, one more thing. Something that I always wanted to say as speaker, but the executive committee is never allowed to tell you. They're always going to try to make sure that everybody feels comfortable. They're trying to make sure that you feel comfortable and safe and respected, and in many regards they should. But also, in this body, in this Senate chamber, you should absolutely never feel comfortable. You should never feel comfortable coming up to this podium. You should be nervous and you should be energized. You shouldn't feel comfortable. It's not a comfortable thing. This is uncomfortable as all heck. But you were elected to do a job, and you were elected to speak for the students of the school. And so you chose that responsibility, and therefore you have that responsibility to uphold it. So that is my spiel. Thank you very much for having me. Good luck, Colin.
That should probably go over. We will now move into, will anyone else like to be recognized for public comment? Yeah? I mean, you are, but if you guys are going to debate or refute,
Senator Gill is right there, so could you please speak? Just saying.
I'm going to answer Tyler's question first, and then I will recognize him. But Tyler, we're not using public comment to debate. Kevin's not part of this organization, so this is the only point where he can talk. All right, would anyone else like to be recognized for public comment? Yes. What's your name?
Kayla Kessler.
Hi, Kayla. You may come up here and use this lovely podium over here.
with the legislation that goes through USG. Personally, my experience with USG is
they are kind of underrepresented populations here on campus, and I feel that but that said, any other representative of the cultural centers have constituents that are underrepresented and that are not being targeted on this campus and have issues that maybe they don't feel comfortable coming up like I am coming to USG and talking about these issues. And it's important to have someone that they're comfortable talking to and that has a vote on this campus. So I'm just saying that I feel that she and all the other ex officio membership have this vote. Thanks.
Would anyone else like to be recognized for public comment? Seeing none, we will now move into the approval of the minutes. Unfortunately, guys, it's my fault, but formatting-wise, I just can't get all the bullet points to look the same and all the margins to be the same. And it was brought up as a concern last time, and I'm still working on it, and I'm meeting with Treason and Andrea, who's the minute editor, tomorrow. So I apologize, but we will get that done soon. We will now move into new business and now concerning emergency funding for Club Chess. Sponsoring senators, please.
Whereas the undergraduate student government is charged with improving the quality of student initiatives through funding. Whereas the Yukon Chess Club is seeking legislative funding to obtain a chess coach to help prepare for the World Amateur Team East Tournament in Parsippany, New Jersey. Whereas the former CFO of the Yukon Chess Club stepped down without notice to the other members. Whereas the Yukon Chess Club was unable to meet the funding deadline. Whereas the Yukon Chess Club is requesting $600 for one 3-hour coaching session. Whereas coaching is a Category B request and is thus subject to 100% funding. Therefore, be it resolved, the undergraduate student government allocates $600 to the Yukon Chess Club for coaching fees.
Right, I will give the motion to the lead, and is there a second? Second by Ray. Are there any questions? Yes, Director Johnny.
So it was mentioned that they weren't able to go through the regular funding process because they didn't meet the deadline. Is there any extenuating circumstances that caused that to happen? If you could yield to.
Yeah. So I'd like to yield to Ray up there. There you go.
Hello. The circumstances regarding us missing the funding deadline, our CFO, who decided to graduate a year early and thus decided on a larger course load, was becoming increasingly distant with our club and was not attending meetings and officer meetings. And upon the end of the semester approaching the summer, he had informed us that he had applied for funding for this coaching, and we found out at the beginning of this semester that he had not actually applied. And so we felt it was unfair to be denied because we were not effectively aware that he had not sent in the funding request.
Thank you. Senator Lemoyne.
my only question is, how good is this coach? It seems like $600 for 1 hour. Like I tutor for $13 an hour, and I make sure that people get at least like an A. $600 for 1 hour. I'm just like, how recommended is this coach? Like, where does this coach come from? Like, what is? Oh, it's 3 hours. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, 3 hours.
Well, he's an international master, and I can't speak on it, but the chess club members collaborate on the international master. What it needs to be on I am.
The coach we are requesting is recognized as an international master by the United States Chess Federation, and for the past 5 years has been coaching for the United States youth chess team, which is like of the highest regard. He's considered like one of the best coaches in the country.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Seeing none, we move into debate. Thank you guys. I'm gonna sit down. Would anyone like to be recognized for debate? Yes, Senator Byrd. Chairperson Byrd.
So I have a problem with this legislation in that, okay, so we have, usually groups have 3 or 4 officers. This group has stated that they were kind of aware that the CFO was being distant, that they may not have been on top of their stuff. And I just see it as the president's job to preside over the group to say, if the CFO is being distant, to take matters into their own hands and say, I'm either going to do the funding or I'm going to go to USG and see if the CFO has done anything. It seems to me that the group didn't take the necessary steps to preside over the group as the officers, and that's why they missed the deadline. I don't see this as an acceptable excuse for funding through the legislative process, as the group missed the deadline for something that was easily preventable and almost in the job description of the other officers. So I am against this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Byrd. Would anyone else like to be recognized in discussion? Yes. Senator Russo. You can say it,
Well, what I was going to say was from the way I heard it, it didn't seem as though it was negligence of not keeping up with their CFO. Rather, they had already been told, like the CFO had said, that they had submitted a funding request, and then upon learning that the CFO hadn't, the way I see it, their CFO is, an important part of their organization. So if he had said he had submitted the funding request, why wouldn't they have reason to believe that he did submit it? To me, it just doesn't seem like it was negligence that they didn't ask, because why would they question it if he had already stated that he'd submitted it? So that's all I have to say.
Chairperson Purcell.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to make 2 quick points. Point number 1 was that we did look at this in the funding board committee. We approved it on an objective basis, just looking at, all their documents were there and everything. Point number 2 is I know we've talked a lot about the legislative funding budget and how much money is left. And this would not put us over that cap. We have about $5,000 to $800 left. I would have had more specifics if this would have gotten a little closer, but this wasn't even close. So this is only $600, and the room left in the budget is around between $4,000 and $5,000. So we'll be able, that should not be one of your concerns if you're going to vote against this.
Senator Sponzo.
Hi guys, so I said this before, I'll say it again. I feel very strongly that in situations like these, it's a question of USG's outreach to these clubs and whether or not they feel they have the resources to come to us or whether they have the information where they can reach us, what the processes are. So
Thank you, Senator Sponzo. Senator Lemoyne.
The only reason why I'm questioning, like, passing or not passing this legislation is because we've had similar things happen with the exact same similar story. The CFO went rogue, they didn't know what to do, and now they're here. So, like, that's a crazy question that I brought up last week, not last week, but last Senate, the Senate before that. At what point do we say, all right, we're gonna use that as a reason, and we're gonna set a precedent for it, or are we going to hold people fiscally responsible for their actions? But again, because that argument can be made for not even just fiscal issues, but any kind of issue that any tier 2 organization is facing. And while outreach is a good thing, I completely support outreach to that, it's almost impossible to say we should reach out to over 350 organizations and tell them what to do and tell them how good their executive committee is and tell them what exactly is going on with their executive committee. Because the only way you can make sure that an executive team is doing their job as executive members is to have as much activity with them as possible. Checking in on them is almost seen as a breach of privacy to them, and you might actually turn off more tier 2s than you would do. So.
Thank you, Senator Lemoyne. Chairperson Byrd. All right, now. Okay. Senator Byrd, would you like to speak? Okay.
So in terms of USG reaching out to other groups, in order for groups to either be applicable for or be able to submit an application for funding, they must go through training through a bookkeeper. And in that training, officers are told that the CFO is not the only person that can submit a budget. So if the CFO goes rogue, the president should know that they can also submit a budget. Secondly, I agree with Senator Lemoyne that it does set a dangerous and bad precedent to say anytime you have something go wrong with one of your officers, you can come to us and we'll fix it. So where the job of the president of a group is to preside over the other officers and the other members of the organization, if they're not doing that, then they failed as well. This isn't a matter of one CFO going rogue and dropping out. It's also a failure on the members of the other officers to check in. So there's something fundamentally wrong with the structure of how their executive committee is. And I'd like to use an example of USG. So if USG had the same situation happen, so let's say the funding board just randomly just stopped doing their job, and the executive committee just didn't do anything about it, even though we have a president who's supposed to preside over those things. If we said to groups that came to us for funding and said, oh, well, we didn't realize that our funding board just stopped doing their job, that wouldn't be an acceptable excuse to them because they know that we have other members of our organization who are constantly checking in with those members. So I think some tier 2 groups have an expectation from us that they don't think we should have from them. So I think that CFOs should be constantly checked in by their president and their other officers. There's a reason that there's not one officer. Because if one officer exists and they're the only person that does it and they fail to do it, then their whole group is screwed, right? But if there's more than one officer to check in with each other, that's how that's supposed to work, and these things shouldn't be happening. So groups should be coming to us when they have a CFO fail to do something, because honestly, it's a failure on the part of the rest of the executive committee.
Thank you, Chairperson Byrd. Director Johnny.
Always had my reservations about kind of bending the rules with funding. So, how many of you are part of a tier 2 organization? Please raise your hand. How many of you are officers of tier 2 organizations? Okay, so a lot of you will know that you are held accountable for your actions, even if you're not president. And I'm part of a tier 2, and I'm held accountable for my actions as well. So, the point's been made before that your officers should be being held accountable for one another. And I also understand that there is enough money, but the reason I'm up here is to urge you to really think about what your definition of a legislative request is. So if you think a legislative request And apart from having enough money, what is your definition of a legislative request? Is it being able to fund groups whenever, they bring a piece of legislation that's not completely unconstitutional? Or is it when there's extenuating circumstances? And bookkeeping has voiced concerns about the liberal nature of Senate's definition of what a legislative request is, because in the past, traditionally, in past years, it has been specifically restricted to circumstances that were unforeseen. So, and the other thing, my last thing, is that outreach isn't just done through funding groups. Just please remember that. And it really breaks my heart to speak against this. I do wish you the best of luck, either way, but I just hope that you guys consider exactly what a legislative request is when you vote for or against something like this.
Thank you, Director Johnny. Before I move to people who have already spoken, anyone who has not been recognized yet, speak. All right, Chairperson Marcella. Oh, wait, no, Senator Murray raised his hand. Never mind.
I would just like to speak to the point of checks and balances between different officers. From my perspective at least, it seems that the other officers did do their jobs in checking in with the CFO. It seems that they did inquire if he did submit the request and they were given an affirmative response. I've been an officer of different organizations in the past, though I'm not currently, and when someone else on the executive board tells you that they have done their job, you don't go behind their back to check if they've done it. You take them at their word. They're an adult, and they should be filling their own responsibilities, and you should trust them on that. Also, in the fall, they did again check with USG to see if that request did go through, and then found out that it wasn't. It was just unfortunately too late. So I think that the other officers, or at least the members of the body, did try to oversee the CFO's actions, and just were not exactly quick enough to catch the problem.
Thank you, Senator Murray. Chairperson Priscilla.
Hey everyone, I like to stay out of legislative funding debates just because I think it's fair to be objective here, but I wanted to say my piece here. First of all, just to slightly amend something Senator Byrd mentioned earlier. He mentioned the idea that because the officers attended training, they know that the president could fill out the funding request. This is true, but if the CFO is the only one that attended the training, he would be the only one that really knew. And if he then went rogue or left, he's the only one that had that information. So the president is by no means required to attend a training. We only make one officer attend. So it's very likely that the other officers wouldn't have known they could have done that. And I also just want to clarify the funding process a little bit, because we make it seem as if they're going rogue, as we've said a few times, and then, well, it was a complete failure to check up because they should have checked up for weeks. But I'll describe the timeline of last semester a little bit. We had budgets due in the beginning of April, and then by probably the second week of April, we sent them back out to everyone. And then we had our first funding deadline May 1st. That means that a group could have gotten their budget back in mid-April, and within 2 weeks their first budget deadline was due. If someone goes missing for 2 weeks, that's not a ton of time to reel them back in and figure out that they're not going to get it done and then have someone else submit the request. That might be partially the fault of our funding system, and we're changing that for next semester. There aren't going to be funding deadlines. But I've had groups that have submitted 2 days late when I've asked, could I count it? To which I say no, because it's just not fair, when do I draw the line then? And I typically just say the deadline is the deadline. But to act like these groups were completely negligent because they weren't quite accountable for their officers, I just want you to know the deadline could be within a week that all of this happens. So just something for you to understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Priscilla. Senator Sponzo.
basis of negligence, because we've had requests of this same nature come to us before and we've passed them. I don't want to speak on precedent as though that's something we should follow blindly, but I think that this is not the time to turn around and say we're not going to fund this club because one of their officers may have, had false communication. I think that, we've passed tap, air, lacrosse, volleyball. So for chess club to come here and see that as our voting history and how this be voted down would be not a productive way to run the way that we work with legislation in this group. So I think at the end of the day, funding chair or chairperson Priscillo said it well. The funding policies, I think, are flawed. The training process is flawed. We need to revamp our training processes, and we will have less of these requests, and we can stop having this conversation once we've done that. So pass this conversation.
Thank you, Senator Sponzo. Senator Lemoyne. Oh, Sullivan. Sorry, Senator Sullivan.
Some good points made. I would just like to say that Senator Sponzo's remarks on precedent coming to we have a bit of a flaw there in that logic. At what point do we stop the precedent? How long do we keep doing this? We've seen this come up a couple of times where accountability is not a reason to withhold funding. Legislative funding should be things like events that come up past the deadline and you don't have time. But there has to be accountability. How many of you voted for previous legislative requests similar to this, but voiced their concerns? You voted for it, but voiced your concerns. When's the point that you stop voting for it? So I ask you, if you have concerns with this bill, don't just talk. Vote for it. Vote for your conscience. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan. Senator Lemoyne.
Okay, so one of the things that's been talked a lot about is training. As a tier 2 executive, 2 tier 2 organizations, there isn't enough training. And in the executive leadership training, it was stressed out at least 3 times that it is our job as president and vice president, or in my case, DG and SG, to watch over all the other executive members and to watch over and to be able to have some type of control. There are actually various tips on how to make sure that everyone is doing their job and how you can do your job to make sure that they were doing best. So having additional training would, as far as in most tier 2 organizations, be the most annoying thing ever to go through, especially since most people actually got denied tier 2 status because they didn't get their training in time because it booked way too quickly. So offering additional training on how to be a better executive board isn't going to solve this issue. You can have as many trainings as you want. It's not going to solve making sure that you have your executive team on control and you know who's doing what and how to take it. The other comment that I heard, I don't know which senator said it, but they said if the minutes have it recorded that I would not consider this if we were going into deficit. What makes the big difference? So you're creating this idea that there was an idea of the president saying if you voted for everybody else to have emergency funding, why are you going to find voting for this emergency funding? And you continue to do that down the line, but then once you reach a deficit, you're going to stop. You've already created the president. You can't stop. So keep that in mind when you vote on certain things.
Thank you, Senator Lemoyne. Before we move on, I'd just like to remind everyone we are debating a piece of legislation regarding the chess club and not the policies in which we vote on all emergency funding requests. Just thought I'd put that out there before we continue. Senator Ali. So yeah, chess club. Because I haven't heard the word chess club uttered in about 5 to 10 minutes. So.
So, in regards to chess club, I don't think that it's a really fun thing for groups to have to go through this process. I don't think we should be trying to have a punitive measure where we're giving funding if you didn't oversight with your CFO. And so it's enough for those groups to have come to this body and have to go through this entire
correct. Senator Romano. Sorry, Senator Cruz. My apologies.
I just want to say, I think we have all made up our minds, and a lot of us know how we're going to vote, so I'd like to call the previous question.
Do I have a second for this motion for previous question? Oh, Senator Lavoy. Yes, 2/3. All right, all those in favor of moving to the previous question, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
All right, we will now do this by a standing vote. All those in favor of aye, please signify by standing. 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. George, you get a vote. Oh, okay. All right, you may sit down. All those opposed, please stand. You may sit down. Any abstentions? Please stand. That's good. 2. Motion passes. 15 to 8, and then 2 abstentions. I'm not very good at that. Oh, you're right. That's my. Sorry, I just saw 6 in the number and I thought it was great. All right, yes, motion fails. We'll go back to the speakers list. Caruso.
Point of person for me.
Yes.
Can you explain what calling the previous question was? Because I don't know if we've had one of those this year.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, calling the previous question is moving back to the original vote that we were debating in that section. So right now is the vote for the overall legislation, but sometimes it goes to amendment. We just moved back to the closest voting procedure. Thank you, Chairperson Masada. Yes, Senator Caruso.
Alright, it seems like it. Alright, anyways, I actually just kind of want to make a minor comment now that all this has occurred, but one of the things that kind of struck me was going back to something Senator Byrd said, and it was that because of the fact that it was a failure of one of the clubs, that we shouldn't help them based on the fact that it was a failure, and just, I don't know if it was the wording, but just the way it came out, but to me it seemed kind of harsh in the way that just because one member of the club failed, and that it was a failure of the group, that we shouldn't help them. And to me, I don't know, for going back to like what the definition of legislative funding is, I understand that if we didn't have money left to do it, this may not be a priority for funding, I guess, but considering we do have money, and like I said before, it doesn't exactly seem like it was negligence. In my opinion, it's part of our responsibility to, help, I guess, when something like this happens. So, that's it.
Comptroller Ryan.
I always feel very comfortable when I come up to this podium. So, one really quick point, not speaking to anything except our budget. Any decision you make should not just be standing on the fact of whether we have or don't have money. I can request $1 million right now and put it up there on legislation, and technically you guys can talk about it and debate it and maybe give it to me because we have enough money to go around to do so. What I'm getting at is that, yeah, we are looking at our legislative fund, our bucket of money towards that going down, reducing, and probably not having enough possibly for the next 2 Senates afterwards if we have a significant influx of legislative requests. But that's not the question at hand right now. The question at hand is whether or not this organization, Chess Club, is entitled to $600 for 3 hours of training to be able to be prepared for their competition. Not about whether we have enough money, not about if we need more trainings, but whether or not this organization has a legitimate piece of legislation up here presented by the sponsoring senators to be able to have this debated or talked about. So I strongly encourage you guys to just, again, speak to this legislation, because if that's what, speak to this legislation, because if you have any issues about the budget, that's why I sit up here, and that's why I'm always around the office where you talk about it, no one talks to me about it. So that's A. And then if you have problems with the trainings and stuff, that's why Stephen is here, that's why we have 3 full-time office staff individuals, as well as 6 part-time bookkeeping students that are here, so you can speak to them about the trainings as well. So do not come up here and start bringing up the problems that we have as a measure to get around the question that is at hand, which is this legislation.
Thank you, Comptroller Ron. Senator Lanza.
I'll make this quick because I really don't like having to say this. It is indeed a failure on the part of the CFO, but it is also a failure on the part of the organization for selecting him. And it is negligence on the part of the executive board for not watching over him and being more careful. Therefore, it is not extending the circumstance, it's negligence.
Thank you, Senator Lanza. Senator Bayanima.
I really love chess. It's a great sport. I'm a big fan of chess. Let me just put that out there. This is a unique tournament. This is a serious tournament. They're getting a very prestigious coach to help them get through this. And you're rejecting it because USG, you wanted them to be so perfect. And they didn't follow your criteria. Come on. Just, let's be realistic right now. Like, they've highlighted everything. You know their circumstances. Let's not try and be too harsh. It really sucks. This is too political. We're making this too political. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Senator Bayanima. Senator Barakar.
Hello, everyone. Okay, I just feel like at this point we're talking in circles. Again, like as Roman said, we all kind of know how we're gonna vote. And I also agree with you. So yeah, just putting that out there.
Wise words. Senator Capano.
I do want to be quick because I do understand people's concerns about people saying the same things most of the time. But I wanted to echo the concerns of Senator Murray, Senator Caruso, and Senator Bayanima. I agree that it's bad that this happened. I think everyone agrees that it's bad when officers don't do their jobs. But I think we can also agree that this group probably didn't plan on the officer not doing their job. And nobody really says, oh great, our officer screwed up, so now we can just do legislative funding. That's easier, because it's not. And we can talk about the training, we can talk about holding groups or officers accountable, and we can talk about this bill, but I think it'd be foolish of us to say that the best way to go about it as a first step is denying the chess club the ability to bring a remote master to train them. I'm kind of in favor of the UConn Chess Club being really good, and so having a really good trainer I think is kind of important. Saying that this is a really big failure on behalf of their organization, I think is also a little much. I mean, here we are again. We're not passing minutes from the last 2 meetings, and we're not here condemning our new board or saying that our organization is a failure. Things happen. Not everything gets done on time. Not everything gets done the right way all the time. We certainly strive for that. Don't expect people to make those mistakes. So $600 for a chess master and trainer versus chess team. I say take the deal.
Thank you, Senator Cognato. Senator Caruso. Do you yield? Okay, Chairperson Burke.
thing to say, so I'm not going to go all the way there. I'd like to clarify my statement that Senator Caruso brought up. I'm not saying that, so what I was clarifying that people addressed the issue of the CFO failing as one person failing, therefore we should fund it. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I think it's a misrepresentation to say that. I think it was a failure on more than one person. That's the only thing I'm saying, is that, so I didn't mean to come off harsh. What I'm saying is that it's not just the CFO going rogue. It's also the other officers not fully. I just see that they waited till after the deadline to go to USG to see if the funding went through, and I think you should go before the deadline, even if there was only a 2-week period. All I'm saying is not just the CFO. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Thank you, Chairperson Bird. Director Johnny, would you still like to speak? Would anyone else like to be recognized for debate? Senator Caruso.
Swear to God, this is the last. Promise, 100%.
If it's allowed, I'd like to yield to former Speaker Kevin Alvarez. I think he might have some insight on the matter.
I'm sorry, former Speaker Alvarez, but I will not recognize that. I'm sorry. All right. Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of approving an act concerning emergency funding for Club Chess, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. All those in favor, please signify by standing. 1, 2, 3, 4. You may sit. Over. All those opposed, please stand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Awesome. You may sit. All those abstaining? Just one. We're missing a voter. Steven doesn't have voting rights. Someone did vote. Oh well. Yeah, someone left. What's up? You mean just a simple majority?
No,
I'm lost into what you're. There's substantial, I believe. I don't think I've ever put an issue with that. Alright, well, motion passes. Act passes. I will now move into an act concerning the spring 2016 funding board budget.
Hello, everyone. So I guess I'm just gonna give some clarity on what's going on because I haven't told you much, and this might be confusing because we have a bajillion different budgets in USG. We just had the budget for the spring for tier 2 groups. So this is just funding board. This is just tier 2 groups.
Chairperson Purcell, I'm going to stop you really quickly. I'm going to motion to recess because, well, someone needs to use the bathroom that we kind of need to be here to take minutes. Second, thank you, Senator Cagnata. Yeah. 5-minute recess, guys. I apologize, but we actually need her to have this meeting, so if she leaves, we're void anyways. Are you unanimous consent? May continue.
I'm working on my ratio.
Yeah, I understand. I
I'm gonna get back to how's life, guys? I wait for a small
Let's get back to this. Someone grab some of your spots out. Alright guys. Alright, we will reconvene at 8:40. 7:40.
All right, everyone. So I just want to quickly sum up what this is, just so you all know. So we had all the tier 2s submit budgets. There was about 270 tier 2s that submitted budgets. First time we're doing it with the new system. So far, so good. I have my vice chair really working on testing out the system, and she's done a great job so far. So I sense good things in the future. Just to give you a sense of precedent, last semester we approved somewhere in the ballpark of 1.3 million as well. And then what happens is groups typically over budget, they don't use their whole budget, and what happened this semester in the fall was that we ended up with groups spending about $770,000. So when Comptroller Rana presents the spring budget for the organization, the number for funding board is going to be lower than this. This is just the first preliminary number. It's just based on the request that we received, and I applied the policies directly to them. But I know it seems like a huge number. Don't be scared by it. In all likelihood, we're going to fund between $550,000 to $750,000 again in the spring semester. So, do you want me to read it? No. All right. So, whereas as the role of funding board is to make. Whereas it is the role of funding board to set aside a budget allocation for the upcoming semester, therefore be it resolved the funding board allocates $1,375,256 for the spring 2016 semester.
Straight to the point, I like it. Is there a motion? Bird. Is there a second? Oh boy. Are there any questions regarding this piece of legislation? Yes, Senator Sullivan. Yeah.
Why exactly
Oh, because I just finished this like today. I mean, the budgets were due the 31st of October, and I've been working on them every day since. So, yeah. Fair point.
If you want to see the numbers, I'm sure Chairperson Purcell will be
I
more
can
than
share the
happy to.
spreadsheet with you if you'd like. I didn't send it out to everyone because it had personal information on it from all the CFOs. But
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move into debate. Is there any debate regarding this piece of legislation? Yeah, Comptroller Rana.
I just want to quickly reiterate Stephen's point in regards to how this number may seem large, but when we do pass the spring 2015 budget in about 2 weeks from now, this number will automatically be at a lower value than this 1.3-ish that we're going to be approving on right now. In fact, that student groups will automatically from there on out will start counting whether or not we need those funds. This, again, as it is a budget in regards to the student groups, and the one thing we don't have control over is how much they budget for. Yeah.
Thank you, Comptroller Rana. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of approving an act concerning the spring 2016 funding board budget, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstention? And clearly passes. Alright, we're now moving to an act concerning the standing rules of the Judiciary.
So a little quick background on this, everybody. Basically, the Judiciary needs to pass standing rules every year, and those standing rules need to be approved by the Senate. That's basically what this is. Whereas Article 14, Clause 10 of the USG Constitution states that the Chief Justice shall be responsible for compiling a set of guidelines that will be presented to Senate for confirmation regarding any duties related to the functioning of the judiciary which is not laid out in the Constitution and bylaws. Whereas members of the USG Judiciary should familiarize themselves with the organization as a whole. Whereas members of the USG Judiciary should interact with the student body of the university. Whereas matters of constitutional inquiry may arise during USG meetings. Whereas compliance with USG law, university policy, local law, state law, and federal law must be ensured. Whereas communication is key to the effective and efficient operation of the judiciary, therefore be it resolved that all justices must hold at least one office hour a week within the USG office. Therefore be it resolved that at least one justice is required to accompany the Chief Justice to Senate meetings for matters of constitutional inquiry. Therefore be it resolved that at least one justice must be present for caucus meetings. Therefore be it resolved that justices must attend at least 2 events thrown by USG per semester. Therefore be it resolved that each justice must choose at least one committee to serve on for the entirety of the academic year. Therefore be it resolved that justices must inform the Chief Justice via email about any expected difficulty or inability to attend a required meeting or event at least 48 hours in advance, with exceptions granted in the event of emergencies or illness. Therefore, be it resolved that justices must respond to communications, including email and written correspondence, addressed to them as members of the judiciary within 48 hours. Therefore, be it resolved that the Chief Justice reserves the right to enforce these standing rules of the judiciary and to take disciplinary action on a case-by-case basis. Therefore, be it finally resolved that these standing rules of the judiciary shall expire at the end of the last Senate session of academic year 2015 to 2016.
Is there a motion? Yes, Senator Burr. Is there a second? Yes, Senator Lemoyne. Are there any questions regarding this piece of legislation? Yes, Senator Lemoyne.
Is what Kevin asked, or not Kevin, what Kevin talked about, like answer to this?
No. Anyone else? Yes, Senator Lanza. No, it just needs one. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes, Senator Byrd, Chairperson Byrd.
Some of these clauses have been long-standing for a while in USG. But those are considered to be put in the bylaws, while other things that are tailored to this specific judiciary could be the standing rules, and things like attending Senate, things like attending a committee.
Right. So as it is right now, these are not in the bylaws for the judiciary, and we will consider adding them to the bylaws at a later date. Right now, we just want to pass the standing rules.
Chairperson Conrad.
It's just my personal privilege. I know it's going to be a long Senate, but can we at least just stand when we're asking questions? I know I had a bad hearing, so unless someone stands to project, I can't hear.
Chairperson Conrad, can you stand, please?
I'm so I'm sorry. Where's your personal privilege that everyone says? So at least with questions, but it's pertaining to like anything, just please stand. I'm a loud person anyway, but I can't hear if people are just sitting and asking questions.
Thank you, Chairperson Conrad. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move into debate. Would anyone like to be recognized for debate? Yes, Senator Quintana. Yes. Senator Kennedy, can you help us out? Thank you. Thank you.
Part of my job also is taking into account different ways to change policy and things like that when it affects the organization. We talked a lot in the past week, at least I did with other members of the student government, about the way that we approach changes and even things that are happening kind of immediately, how they need to be thought out and thorough. I don't believe that this sort of standing rules for the judiciary is the best that we can do. Right away, I understand the need to pass rules right away so the judiciary can enforce them, but I think part of the reason why we see a lack of communication and a lack of attendance is because the only thing that's really outlined for the judiciary is the Constitution, which outlines what we expect from the judiciary, but doesn't really provide us that much on what we expect from individual members. So I know that has been part of the concern here. And I don't think that just changing the standing rules, which won't be in our bylaws for anyone to see going forward, Unless we do that at a later date, I guess makes sense. But even the way that these changes work, saying that there needs to be at least one other judiciary, other justice at a meeting, doesn't say who, doesn't say how many meetings a justice is supposed to attend. I just think that we don't need to do this right away. We already have 3 justices here. Without these standing rules, I think we can take a better approach to this that changes our bylaws so that people are more aware of the responsibilities that they have going forward, instead of just saying, well, now we have rules and we can enforce them against the people who didn't know what the rules were. One of the members of the Judiciary who's not here tonight has voiced concerns with me that he wasn't part of the consideration of these standing rules. I know it's up to the Chief Justice, but I think, again, while we're talking about making change going forward, we should make sure that when we're passing rules, we have a discussion with everyone about it. So I'll be voting no.
Yes.
They need to be amended at a later time. You can either strike or add.
Yes. We'd have to bring it up with the code. All right. Anyone else? Yes. Deputy Speaker Wang.
Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to say that yes, we will look at amending the bylaws for this at a later date, but the Constitution still requires that standing rules be passed for the judiciary. So even if we do adjust the bylaws, standing rules are something that we do need to vote on. Second, I'd like to yield to Chief Justice Riff.
Hello, my little possums. So, we're up here tonight to talk about something that was written into my job description. So, I would strongly argue that if you have a different idea or something that you would go about and amend these rules. So, feel free to do that. I'm in favor or not, whatever. Yeah.
Senator Lee.
Hi guys. So the big issue that I take with this legislation is that the first clause in the Constitution is it asks people to go before Senate. I don't understand why Senate has the power to approve or not approve behaviors when it's other branch, when there's already a chief justice in charge of that branch. And I think it's extremely problematic that nobody else approves our behavior besides us, but somehow we have this jurisdiction over another branch's power. And so I think that that's how the Constitution reads right now. The Constitution also says that we have to have the Senate rules position by no later than the second reading. But that is not necessarily necessary for the functions of the government, so we haven't done that, and that's okay. And so I think here we see a problem with this. We don't necessarily have to follow rules in the Constitution, even if we say it's wrong just because it's there.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Would anyone else like to be recognized before I go back to Deputy Speaker Wang? Yes, Senator Sullivan.
I'd just like to go back to something that Deputy Speaker Wang said. Yes, it is important that we do pass these rule changes for the judiciary, the current judiciary. However, there is no set timeline, so if you do have problems and you would like to change something, it can be done at the next Senate, unlike Senate rules, which were supposed to be done by the second meeting. And that actually is a big deal because that's a violation of the Constitution. So we're acting out of order right now.
Good point, Senator Sullivan. Would anyone else like to be recognized before I go back to Deputy Speaker Wang? Seeing none, Deputy Speaker Wang.
So a couple of things. First of all, I do not think that because one part of the Constitution may or may not be followed at this point, doesn't mean that we should not do our best to follow the rest of the Constitution. And I'd like to yield again to Chief Justice Riff.
Hi, everyone again. Listen, I would like to address what George just mentioned the argument that. All right, here's the other thing. Somebody had also mentioned that they were left out of the conversation, and although it is not written into the Constitution to make sure that judiciary, in other words, my associate justices, believe whether or not they like these rules or not. That being said, I did talk to all of the justices to discuss my reasoning for each and every one, and if they had any input as to other things they would like to see in the guidelines.
Can the Chief Justice enforce standing rules on others as policy?
We don't say I was going to deal with you. But judiciary.
So, considering articles of impeachment, just to be perfectly clear, I am not going to impeach anybody with malicious intent, nor is that my intention in providing these guidelines and rules. It is somewhat vague, and if you'd like a further clarification, what that meant in particular was that should a case arise where somebody is not responding to emails, they are not making meetings, and they are not making the effort to let me know as to the reason why, I would, in that scenario, sit down and discuss it with them. In other words, I would have them come to a meeting with me. That is not to say that I'm going to go kicking people out left and right, because I love all of my justices. So that was the question. So no, I will not be using this to impeach other justices. That being said, if you look under the Constitution, I have it open over there, but I'm not going to go get it. Under impeachment procedures, you'll see that for Senate, Senate leadership, which consists of 3 people, the Speaker, the parliamentarian, and the Deputy Speaker, has the power to remove any of you who do not go to, if you miss more than 2 excused or 2 unexcused absences. 2 unexcused absences, and of course you have the right with 2/3 majority to overrule that. I do not have such power. It's also not interested in the Constitution how an appointed justice would go about being impeached, nor the Chief Justice. As it says in the Constitution, if you look very closely, it refers to an elected justice, under which the Constitution provides for 3 different types of members, and that is committee members, elected members, and appointed members. It does not refer to appointed justices, for which all 6 of us are. So, should there be an extreme case that arises where a justice does need to be removed, then yes, that provision would cover impeachment.
What do you guys think?
I'd also like to refer back to a comment that was made earlier. If anybody is uncomfortable with these standing rules, please let me know. I also want to make it clear that you also have the option to bring amendments to this legislation right now if you want. I don't think that, I think it's wise for us to actually have some guidelines set down for the judiciary as soon as possible.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker Wang. Would anyone else like to be recognized for debate? Yes, Senator Coronado.
So I'm glad to hear that the standing rule won't be grounds for impeachment for any members of the judiciary. But I also take some issue with some of the items that are contained in the bill. The first resolve clause being that all justices have to hold an office hour a week within the office. We can talk about the merits of office hours and the way that they're currently structured for our organization. I don't believe that it's going to make our judiciary function any better to require individuals to appear in the USG office for once a week to do whatever
for the second whereas clause, or for the second resolve clause, again, I do think that it's good to have a justice to accompany the Chief Justice. I don't like that it just says at least one justice, because again, that doesn't really place any responsibility upon a member to be there. It just says one of you has to be there. Doesn't really put a lot of structure into that. At least one justice to be present for caucus meetings. That's great. And the justice is required to attend 2 events. I see the role of the judiciary to be to interpret the Constitution, to answer matters of constitutional inquiry. As much as I'd love to see them around, I do see all of you around the office. I don't think that we need to require as our standing rules for the judiciary that they attend our outreach events. And for committee as well, I just don't, I've been in multiple committees, I just don't think that we need to require justices to be there. I think that we should be placing more emphasis on getting the judiciary to meet and discuss with each other issues pertinent to the Constitution and our documents, rather than just setting office standards for them to follow that we aren't really sure that they have any merit. So I'm going to motion to remove the first whereas clause, the first resolve clause, the fourth resolve clause, the fifth resolve clause, and I kind of, again, take issue with something with part of our standing rules to say that we require them to respond within 48 hours. I understand the need for communication, but I don't think that any senators are required to respond within 48 hours. I mean, very often we'll send out doodle polls or sign-ups for things that no one ever even opens. So I again, because these aren't going to be enforced with impeachment, I'd say sure, leave them in there as a guideline for responding emails. But I wouldn't incorporate something like that into the bylaws. But I, again, motion to remove the first resolve clause, the fourth, and the fifth.
So, you scroll down to the okay,
The first reading, all justices must hold at least one office hour a week within the USG office. The fourth reading, justices must attend at least 2 events thrown by USG per semester. And the fifth reading, that each justice must choose at least one committee to serve on for the entirety of the academic year.
All right, is there a second for his motion? All right, Michael? That sounds like a second first thing. So we'll now go into questions about this. Any debate? Yes, Senator Lemoyne.
Okay, so honestly, I really don't see the big issue in requiring to do an office hour. If anything, I always have questions about constitutionality and stuff, and it's very convenient for me to be a little tired for coworkers. But I'm pretty sure that other senators have questions too, where they find somebody being in the office for to talk to. And allowing availability for a person you can actually talk to is not that big of a deal, nor is it that bad. So I really don't see why it's such a huge issue.
Thank you, Senator Lemoyne. Deputy Speaker Wayne? Oh, okay, Senator Lee?
So this is exactly what I was discussing before. Senator Cognado obviously has very good intentions with this, but he's not a member of the judiciary. And the people on the judiciary who have no speaking rights unless we yield to them, unless we decide they're allowed to talk, are not being able to shape their own behaviors. I feel like it's inherently problematic for us as a Senate body to decide how another branch acts.
All right, okay. By unanimous consent? Okay. All right, well, drawn. We'll now move it back into debate regarding the original act. So guys, what just happened is Senator Cognado no longer wishes to pursue this amendment, and now we're moving back into the original act. Is there any more debate for this act? All right, seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of approving an act concerning the standing rules of the judiciary, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Those two. Any abstentions? Abstain. And clearly passes. That was really sad, guys. Okay, we'll now move into an act concerning the undergraduate student government elections and representation policies. Senator Chairperson Pignado. I urge everyone to please, if you were just kind of doodling on your computer or anything, please put it away for now. This is very important, and if we want to make this as efficient as possible, so please pay attention. I know we went over it during caucus, but there are some changes that Senator Chairperson Pignado put on. If you didn't read it, you need to pay attention now. We have to be very diligent with this.
So I'm the big bad guy making election policies. We made it here to talk about election policies. We survived. So I'm going to start. I want to start by thanking my elections oversight committee. That includes Colin, Tim Lynn, Katie Bluen, Comptroller Rana. So, you know, it's. I always think when I think about committees, I always think about what Adam said last year about how the committee doesn't help, the committee really does it all. And I really had a great committee, and we got to dig into a lot of issues. Some of them are before you tonight, some of them aren't, but the dialogue happens either way, and we're excited to continue working through the spring semester to make sure that we can look at some other policies that have to do with elections. And also to make sure that fall materials are prepped well ahead of time so that that you guys can run this efficiently next year as well. And anybody who's kind of interested in this crazy job that is the USC chair, you're welcome to sit in as a guest on the meeting and kind of see how that goes. It's very exciting. And so we'll get into election policy. I want to start by saying that there have been a few friendly amendments to the bill that have to do with grammar. Some of them are in the election packet. Another change is the net ID list is now going to have an Excel formatted requirement instead of a doc requirement, things like that. As you guys were informed before, we've also taken out the resolve clause on the bylaws election policies bill, which, by the way, we can change bylaws in the Constitution. Anyone can do that at any time. Just want to make sure everyone knows that. But we've withdrawn that last clause with assurances from our exec committee that it will be something that we talk about more in depth, and that lends itself to more Senate voices, which we always thought was very important. So, student government election packet for 2016 spring elections. Starts out, declaration of interest forms we changed. Anyone in this room who's considering running, and anyone outside of the room who's also considering running, please be informed. That one kind of big change, but not really, is that the declaration of interest forms which you have to be submitted before you can begin the official campaign business. That's going to help us keep better track of the candidates are through the elections period. It's going to help us ensure a more transparent, fair election. We'll go to the second page. We've got a nice timeline. I do have to say, though, that there table of contents. I should say, though, that there's going to be added on a couple forms that have to do with triad training and other things that aren't really up for change. They're just going to be tacked on at the end of the pack. I want to make sure you guys know that. But we did add in a disclosure, which I guess you guys can kind of read up there if you'd like, but it has to do with making sure that students, and whether they're running for office or not, know that we require students to pay the undergraduate student government fee to participate in the elections, whether as a candidate or as a voter. We wanted to make that as clear as possible, and we'll be looking for ways to do that as the timeline continues through the election period. Declaration of interest forms, pretty standard. Campaign timeline.
Some things I wanted to point out in the campaign timeline, we already have the date set. There's 2 weeks that are set open for campaign events. So I know we talked about getting more events in the timeline. We're kind of going to do those as we go within the weeks that we see set aside for pre-election trainings and info sessions. I would encourage you again, because it's under your member responsibilities in the Constitution, to talk to people about open positions that we have, which we encourage your friends to run if you think they'd be interested. One of the cool events that we're going to be co-sponsoring this year is the Center, which is a lecture event, which is a lecture for female candidates for student government and political office. That provides a lot of great resources to them. So we're even still looking for more events, ways to incorporate cultural centers and other student populations in our elections. Scrolling, I got numbers for colleges last week from somebody at the registrar, who was very nice. These are the numbers split here for academic senator positions that come to a total of 25. Open executive positions will be, having elections for the multiple universities as well, which, as I understand it, currently are open to any fee paying undergraduate student with the intention of representing issues and concerns for multiculturalism and diversity on campus. Going through campaign policies and election policies in this setting down here. Not much has changed besides, well, some has changed. Most changes have been formatting, looking at different clauses. We looked at a lot more than we decided to change. One thing that we think is going to be efficient for the organization is the collection of net IDs in an Excel document, which we can work towards checking in a more efficient way. Making sure that this doesn't take that much time, especially when we have a shorter timeline in the fall for elections. Declaration of interest form changes, going to the next page. The clause requiring candidates to be the sole person responsible for collecting signatures on their behalf, which includes an exception for president, vice president, and comptroller tickets, who are, if you look deeper into policy, are able to hold a roster to fulfill kind of campaign needs. Any items to be given away by a candidate have to be approved by a majority of the Elections Oversight Committee on the grounds that they indicate the spirit and integrity of the organization. That's something that we feel like we need more oversight on a case-by-case basis. As far as giveaways go, and as you guys are aware also, and this is more on a holistic level. A lot of these changes were vetted again against kind of the concerns and ideas that were brought to us in the caucus. And some of those changes, a lot of those changes were towards the exclusio voting rights clause, which isn't before you tonight, but there was also reconsideration on every motion. We did decide to continue with reducing the amount available to presidential and vice presidential tickets to $300, as well as comptroller $250. I'm kind of just going to keep going through and listing exactly what we're doing. I don't really want to provide any commentary on it or debate. We can say that for later. We changed section 5 violation policies to now include, instead of just saying voting members of USG are required to report all violations, all members of the student government are required to report violations. So again, as we get into the elections period, I want to remind everyone, please, that if you see someone violating any of these policies, email me. Email EOC at usg.ucon.edu so that we can enforce those. So that's very important. Yeah.
You said that you are continuing to keep the funding down for the tickets. I don't see that in the legislation itself. There's all the changes you have in the legislation.
Oh, I apologize. He sent me a updated version about an hour or two beforehand.
Are you talking about legislation?
Like the legislation.
Yeah, the legislation. Yeah. There's an updated version that we'll bring up afterwards, and then that's when we'll go through debate on each item, and then we'll go there. I apologize. I just didn't think it would be that good to send it out to you guys 2 hours beforehand.
So just sort of as we're going through those, that's kind of a good point to make. If you guys hear anything, and we can go back if anybody needs to be reminded of anything that's in here. Anything that's in the election packets, you can motion to change or amend, just like anything that's going to be on the legislation, which includes bylaw changes explicitly and constitution changes. Policies that are explicit to just elections are changed in the packet, because the packet is the only
guys, the EOC is making recommendations to you guys, but you have the final say.
So feel free to ask questions. I'm not going through all the major things we changed. If anything, write it down. I know you guys probably all don't have a draft or a packet in front of you, but if you do, go Steve.
Here, I'll send it out right now to you guys. You can bring them up on your computers.
Individuals on the campaign roster will be eligible to collect signatures. That was kind of understood before. We wanted to make it clear to highlight the difference between presidential comptroller tickets and senator tickets. Moving into campaign etiquette. Any items? Okay, I said that. So yeah, any items. Basically, we're going to require approval for funding of items that are giveaways, and we're just requiring general approval of giveaways to make sure that there's oversight on that, and that there's oversight on that. We're also prohibiting, as is noted in the joint elections policy for trustee and other university positions, we are adding a clause that say that candidates are prohibited from campaigning with or adjacent to technology utilized for voting purposes. We're going to be having this pretty much specifically applies to the elections period, which is March 2nd through March 4th. We understand the need to use technology. We're in the 21st century. We would encourage all candidates to, if you think it would help your campaign, form an email list of people who are interested to vote for you. However, whatever you want to do. But in the period of actual voting, we would like to be administering more non-affiliated polling stations. This is an idea brought to me by funding board chair Porcella. So we're going to be moving forward with that, having USC members, be at those stations. In taking a broader stance against giveaways and coercion and things like that, we think it's important that when students are actually in that space voting, that they don't need to have a candidate there right next to them, enforcing that vote in any way. But again, we would encourage candidates to use technology outside of the elections period, and we encourage you still to campaign during the elections period, which is something that we could have changed but decided not to. We think it's important to campaign. You can do that with, president and vice president tickets. You can do that with $500 or $500
the undergraduate student government election and representation policies.
Whereas bylaw 10 entrusts both the Elections Oversight Committee with introducing revised elections policies to the Student Senate and the chair with the responsibility of submitting all election guidelines for approval prior to elections paperwork being available each semester.
Be it enacted, the undergraduate student government adopts the election policies and materials as presented in the spring 2016 elections packet.
Be it further enacted, the undergraduate student government amends bylaw 10, section 7 to read, no person who has served on the Elections Oversight Committee is eligible to run in elections of the undergraduate student government.
Be it further enacted, the undergraduate student government amends bylaw 10 to include a section 12 which shall read, in case of a fall election, the Elections Oversight Committee reserves the right to release election packets to students at the start of the semester, even if pending approval by the Senate. Prospective candidates must be notified of any revisions or amendments.
Be it further enacted, the undergraduate student government amends bylaw 17, section 3 to read, for the purpose of residential Senate seats, each of the following shall be considered a residential area: alumni, Busby Suites, Charter Oak Apartments, commuter, off-campus residents, East, Greater Hillside, Connecticut Commons and West, Hilltop Apartments, Hilltop Halls and Garrigus, Husky Village, Mansfield Apartments, McMahon, North, Northwest, Northwood Apartments, South, Store Center, Buckley and Shippey, and Towers.
Be it further enacted, the undergraduate student government amends bylaw 17, is that 17? 17, section 6 to read, in the case of a tie election, any undergraduate student government election or runoff election is to be held in the constituency of the tie election. This must be done under the parameter of the undergraduate student government constitution and the guidance of the judiciary.
Be it finally enacted, the undergraduate student government amends bylaw.
I mean, it doesn't really matter because I feel like you're aware that Review Center still has about
The ex officio part of it was taken off after I received this. We can, before there's a motion, we can just.
I'll just press that.
Be it finally enacted, the undergraduate student government amends bylaw 17 to add section 20, which shall read, in the event that a candidate resigns or forfeits an elected seat before being sworn in, the runner-up in the candidate's election shall assume the seat. And a section 20A, which shall read, a runner-up that is established by write-in votes must reach the minimum write-in vote threshold to be considered a viable candidate.
Be it resolved, the undergraduate student government approves and submits for student referendum an amendment to the Constitution striking Article 2, Section 7B, which reads, total for all residential zoned seats shall not exceed 20 seats.
Be it further resolved, the undergraduate student government approves and submits for student referendum an amendment to the Constitution striking Article 2, Section 8B, which reads, the total of all academic school and college seats shall not exceed 25 seats.
That's actually the final result.
Senator Byrd has brought up the fact that there are missing links between the actual legislation and the packet, so I'm just going to motion for a 5-minute recess just so we can iron that out. And second by Byrd. By unanimous consent, and also then you guys can go up and discuss, because I know you didn't get these in time, so you can bring it up to discussion right now and be able to have a conversation. By unanimous consent? Alright, recess at 8:26. Talk, guys. This is what we're supposed to be discussing. You just got to do piece of legislation. You guys have to move forward. Alright, we will now resume at 8:37. Alright. How we'll start this is just questions in general. motion? Yeah, the motion first. Would you like to motion now? Motion to Sullivan, second by Wayne. Questions? Alright, hold on. Keep your hand up. Sullivan, you can go and speak.
Always All right. So I'm just going to ask a few questions that I picked out and go back and forth. The first part, this is just for my personal, I guess, it's just information in general. Disclosure for international student fees, so people can know what avenue would we go by making the fee mandatory for international students. The first change is allows international students the option to pay the fee, which is a step in the right direction, I think. So they have a chance to vote or run. Is it just run or vote and run? Yeah. I yield that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, okay. Great, thank you for the clarification. I wasn't aware. Second,
just to touch on that as well.
Yes,
So really the change here is just trying to be more proactive about making students aware of that. And that again, it's, it's not all international students, but there's disproportionate effect of that population, and that being able to give them the option to pay the fees. We're looking to make students involved of their ability to participate.
Yeah, I totally support it. I just
wanted to clear that
up. The second part is the sole collector of signatures for Senate seats. It seems to me that there is an inherent self-interest in going around and collecting your own signatures. It's not that hard. It's 50. I did it in like a couple of days. And how, do you have any personal knowledge of instances where someone else, can you think off the top of your head how many times this has happened where a candidate got somebody else to collect signatures? I feel like this isn't, at least from my personal experience, I haven't heard of this happening with anybody, but you have been a long time member, so.
Sure. It looks like Parth has an answer to that question, so I'll start and then I'll kind of yield to him and see if he can add anything on that. We saw a couple of instances where it was potentially a problem, but it wasn't. I have to preface that by saying that it wasn't pursued as a problem or a violation of the election policy. It was kind of talked about as, well, this is happening. This is what the policy is. Should the policy be different? How can the policy be interpreted? So the intention wasn't to look back and point fingers at any individuals, but just to say, should we change this? And the committee decided that it was something that we should propose to change. We had 32 candidates, or 30-something candidates for the fall election. And so the way that always kind of works is that there's a big portion of them that are in USG, that are around all the time, that I see them exposed to, but there's a large portion that none of us really see just because they're not currently involved with student government. So we thought that instead of just interpreting that policy or talking to specific individuals about it, we thought it would be best to change the policy in the elections packet in hopes that all candidates read it and that they have a clearer picture of what that policy is. And Parth, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I was involved with one of the presidential campaigns my freshman year, and they required 200 signatures, and I recall that four different people collected over 50 signatures for them. So it just comes down to a matter of convenience for people, I would say, that obviously if you have two people that go out at the same time, you get 100 hundreds of times that you get 50. if you're running as a comptroller or as president, now go out and meet 200 individual students as yourself, rather than having someone else on your behalf speak on behalf of your own ideas. So that allows now these individuals to go, say their own ideas, say their own ideologies, speak to students and on the student body, rather than having someone else do it. And that's kind of the avenue we look at.
It seems to me that for at least comptroller, vice president, those positions where you have a lot, and even senators for that matter, there's already an inherent benefit. And so if they don't collect those signatures, they lose out. Or if they collect those they have people helping them collect those signatures, and there's an error somewhere, well, it's on them anyway. There's some inherent responsibility. If you feel like this would...
Point of order or question?
Yes, yeah, I think he was getting it.
He was continuing.
So, I was about to, I know, I'm allowed to, one more question. So in your opinion, would this just help streamline things? Like, in terms of errors with... Well,
The counts that we have established are kind of minimums, and there'll be additional signature sheets in the office that are available to candidates. I know when I collected signatures to get on the ballot, got an extra 4 or 5 at the bottom just in case. But especially for a campaign that's going to utilize their roster to have separate sheets and go around, then there's no there won't necessarily be pension for an instance where someone gets exactly 250 and then one is messed up and then they're not qualified. Would also be kind of lenient on that as well. But the goal is to have senator candidates who are at the lower end of that threshold be responsible for doing it themselves.
Final question, I promise. Now, something I found in the election packet was under the list of candidate positions. We have, for senators, we have academic senators, we have residential senators, and we have 2 seats for multicultural diversity. My question being is looking through the Constitution, because this is like the first time I've heard tonight between Kevin and now in this packet of these 2 seats. Is this constitutional? Because under Article 2, Section 6, it describes that all members of this body will be elected from either residential areas or academic areas. So I'm wondering, and I know this has been a practice for a while, but it seems like that's a conflict to me, and I would like to know your opinion on that.
Well, I would echo the sentiment that we need to be making sure that our documents are up to date for all our members to see at all times. I kind of put this together and got a last minute, okay, by the way, we've got to make sure MCD seats are on there. So my putting in the packet was kind of on the information given to me that they're there, they have to be there. But I agree with you that we should be making sure those are available more regularly.
Would it be appropriate to move for judicial review on this matter?
We'll do that at any point.
Okay. So point of constitutionality on the multicultural and diversity seats. So I yield to the Chief Justice Group. That's my last question.
So, Senator Sullivan, I'm guessing that you're referring to Article 2, Section 6 of the Constitution, which states constituencies for the undergraduate student senate shall be determined by residential zones and academic schools and colleges. In that opinion, if these are referring to ex officios,
Either come back and say,
So first, I'm going to motion to table currently the consideration of multicultural and diversity seats, which can be motioned to be removed from the table and considered once the judiciary has completed their review of the Constitution.
Unanimous consent. So ordered. We'll continue.
So anybody else have questions?
Senator Langer.
Just have a quick question about residential seats. What's going to happen if CTC is demolished and the STEM building is finished?
Sure. The zones as interpreted in the bylaws are encouraged to be changed by the EOC every year. So we kind of left in the Greater Hillside Center, which encompasses both West and CTC, which we think is a good kind of way to just let it be a representation of both. Once CTC is gone, it'll still be a representation of West. Maybe we can consider moving the name back to West. And in the fall, when we have the numbers on, when the STEM building's ready, we have the numbers of the population, the EOC chair then, or if I know by the end of the spring semester, we'll make sure that that's changed by us.
Thank you, Senator Langer. Senator Villar. Oh, okay. So we'll come back to that. Jefferson Byrd. Here.
So this is a question, but I just see a practical problem about the clause about technology. I don't like the word adjacent is the one that concerns me. So is it the role of the EOC or is it the job of the EOC to kind of decide cases, like for example, someone says, vote for me, and their phone's in their pocket or their computer's in their backpack. Is the EOC's job to kind of figure like, okay, that's not a violation?
I can expand further on it if you'd like, but if this answers your question, I won't be enforcing violations against any candidate for having a student walk past them with the phone in their pocket.
Okay.
No, so the policy on technology.
But I guess my question is, if a student, say in USG, came to the EOC with that, would the EOC hear that, or would it just?
No, we don't.
Senator Sponzo.
I would recommend that we not.
What is the policy surrounding petitions in terms of having them on an Excel sheet? Do you suggest that candidates go around with a computer with the Excel sheet open and ask for the petitions to be put directly in, or will it be a piece of paper that the candidates are required to copy from to the Excel sheet? And if it's the second one, how do you account for typos, considering that that's up to 250 collections of numbers and letters that all don't really make any sense?
The collection of net ID, the Excel spreadsheet for collection of net IDs is required for submission to the State Council election packet by noon on February 12th. So those will be required to be submitted. I don't know if it makes more sense for a candidate to have them enter it into a computer as they go. It was sort of, I think, our understanding as a committee that we would follow sort of the normal processes to get signatures, and then once the candidates got all their signatures together, they would compile them in a spreadsheet and submit them.
Okay, so how will you account for typos, or will you assume that if something is wrong, will you assume that it's a fake net ID, or will you ask the candidate, was this a typo? Could you refer to your spreadsheet? I just feel like asking people to copy into a piece of technology that many numbers and letters, you'll have a high level of typos.
Sure. Well, because that person is required to sign the petition, you can check that if you'd like. I'm just going to kind of also just take a step forward and say I don't really recommend you doing it as candidates writing in because it requires them to sign it as well. For their convenience, it kind of just makes sense to have a signed election packet. Once you have your 50, go through and just type up all the net IDs in an Excel spreadsheet and send it in. And that's for us to be able to check on a holistic level that people are going about it the right way. I'm not going to pursue violations for individual net IDs with misspellings. I mean, there's also easy ways to check. We can search a name in the UConn phone book to see if they're a student. But again, we're not going to be going after people for one net ID that follow up on things like that, but it's not going to be life or death.
Any more questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move into debate. How I'm going to do this is we will go through each clause basically one by one, so then we can have a linear debate on each, so we're not jumping around and hitting one and then going back to another and all that. So, debate. Chairperson Burke.
Motion to split the question.
All right, is there a second?
Well, yes.
Oh, yeah.
So, the first be it enacted clause be voted on separate from the other be it further enacted clause. So what you're highlighting now will all be voted on separate, and the reason is because those have a 2/3 threshold for passage, and the first one only has a simple majority threshold for passage.
So we're going to pass the packet, and then we're going to pass everything else, which includes the bylaw changes.
That's fine.
All right. Is there a second? Michael. Is there a debate? Sorry, questions? Is there any debate? Yes, avoid.
My question is that, are we have to separate them into two separate pieces of legislation?
No, we're just voting on one and then voting on the other.
Okay.
All right. Yes, Senator Sullivan. Yeah.
Again, I will say this, that I don't think we should vote on this packet until the justices.
The question about the motion split,
Yeah.
about whether it's or either the.
So you can say that you don't.
Oh, my mistake.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're just separating the two. So. All right. Anyone else? All right. We'll now move to vote to split the question as highlighted. George, can you highlight everything? Okay. All those in favor of splitting the question, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. All right. Passes. All right. We will go into the first clause. I don't have that in front of me. Yes, I do. Which just states that the city government adopts the election policies and materials as presented in the spring 2016 election packet. So we'll move into debate about this. Have we heard back? Yeah, we'll do them as we get together. All right, motion to table this specific vote to after this other vote. Is this a question or a second? Okay, 7 seconds and sponsor the motion because, yeah. All right, is anyone lost right now? Okay, what are you lost on? What's up? Okay, what we just did, that motion that we just put through. I don't know. Judiciary, how are we feeling over there? Justice Perry, can you come and stand here and speak, please? Thank you.
Senator Sullivan's original concern was the wording of the campus-wide senator positions, multicultural university seats removed those seats from the inclusion from the Constitution. Now the Constitution solely dictates that senators be elected from residential zones and academic zones. And so if
No.
No, it's okay.
I yield to President Conboy.
So originally we took away the MCD seats, and that was because the issue was they felt like they weren't actually representing what they stood for, and it was just kind of a seat that we had trouble publishing. So when the same time at when we did all of the group of the houses, what's it called? Zoning. Same time they did the zoning, the MCD seats, and then to respond to that. I was one of the authors as well as Adam. We didn't feel that was right. So then we wrote a new legislation that also went to referendum last year and was passed, creating the 5 dedicated ex officio seats with 2 MCD seats that required letters from at least one director per rep saying that they are an active member of the cultural center. And that was because of the fact that there were no rosters, that each center kept track in different ways. So this was a way to kind of keep it. We were making sure students were active with the issue of diversity on campus and they were actively participating in these things. So that was what we did. That was passed and approved, and Becca has it in her email. One of the issues of this is what happens when there was a lot of going back and forth trying to fix things with the Constitution, and then it got muffled. And we've been trying to address it, but one that was sent to referendum and voted on will be handled. And I apologize.
Can I ask a question? So, there were 5
Originally,
like, still, like 5, like, dedicated, like,
they're MCD seats, so the wording that Bennett used, I believe, is the same. It was open seats, but they were described as multicultural university, but there's no other.
but now I'm saying, like, in the referendum that you would, there's 2, but there's still
5.
the 5 ex officios, and then there are 2 MCD seats. Got it.
And this was passed last year, Bennett.
I do not know.
Yes, it should be.
Okay, how would you all feel about recessing about this to clarify things? Alright, motion by Chairperson Byrd, is there a second? Second by Sullivan. Can we do this by unanimous consent? Is there any dissenting voices? 5 minutes on the dot, guys, like 9:07. Recess. Alright, we will now resume at 9:08. Yes, Senator Sponzo. We'll clarify. No. We're gonna specify first. I'm sorry, Senator Sponzo. Yeah, but we did recess for a reason, and we did check the constitutionality. The reason why we recessed was for them to be able to do that. So we're gonna go to them first, then we'll go to you. Yes. Alright, and by unanimous consent, can we move from the table the MCD seat discussion back onto current table, this table right here? Awesome. Sorry, Chief Justice Riff.
Howdy, guys. So concerning Article 2 of the Constitution, there were 3 changes made last year, which you will not find in your Constitution, your copies. Section 10A added the requirement of 5 ex officios to be representatives from the 5 cultural centers. Section 8 added 2 seats for multicultural and diversity senators. Section 8A added requirements for multicultural and diversity senators.
Yes, requirements to be allowed.
That's not included in the Constitution.
Yeah.
Let's refer to the bylaws, so
It's the requirements for MCD centers and bylaws.
Yeah, there actually are provisions in bylaws.
The only, I have the bylaws up right now. The only reference is that senators elected to represent interests of MCD shall similarly establish and maintain. That's not a. That's the only. This is the only reference. Unfortunately, on the governing documents on the USG website, the bylaws are not the ones that relate to the Constitution because the only aspect of it is that MCD seats represent other people. Alright. Yes. You may sit down, Chief Justice.
Okay, so, just a quick prelude. I think that we need to probably make sure in the future that senators have the most updated version of the constitutions in their binders. I think that would probably actually be imperative, like arguably one of the most important things we could actually do ever. Secondly, I have a question about the MCD seats, why there are 2 only and not 5, and how we negotiate who is represented with a vote in those seats, who's eligible to run for those seats, and why. That's one of my first questions, and if I can have a follow-up after that, that'd be cool as well.
Sure. So all students are eligible to vote for any CD senators. They're campus-wide constituency
To run?
positions. Yes. Any students are eligible to run. I believe the requirement, there was a requirement for a letter from, I'm getting hand signals from the back of the room, so. Yeah, sure, actually. Yeah.
So first, just a point of information. This isn't about the constitutional revisions for last year. It's about the election policies for this year.
Yeah.
The MCD seats was decided that way. What Rachel was just explaining was we have the 5 seats. They removed those 5 seats and they put in the ex officio seats. Rachel and I felt that there should still be some multicultural diversity representation that were elected voting seats. And so we amended the Constitution and the bylaws again last year at the Senate to include those 2 seats with letters of recommendation. Not necessarily letters of recommendation, but letters from the director saying that these members were active participants.
Okay, so, but does that not then basically make the MCD seat an ex officio seat with a vote because it's essentially the exact same thing that we have now, and they have to be from the cultural center, they have to have a letter of recommendation, and that is what we're kind of striving for with the ex officio voting rights?
That's not an issue for today. That was the issue for last year's legislation.
No, I understand that, but I think that it's come up now and we don't.
I'm not understanding why this is put into these election policies.
Because how we vote on I'm just saying that talking about this now, I think, has an impact on, well, that was actually my follow-up question, because how can we have a conversation about this if we haven't talked about ex officio voting rights yet, and how that will impact the election policy? And the election
I can answer that because they're not included in the current election policy, so they're just not part of the consideration right now. So I would say if anybody has any thoughts on that, I guess it's safe for discussion. But yeah, there's nothing about ex officio voting rights that are included in the election policies that are on the floor.
Point of information, and clarify me if I'm wrong, that hypothetically, we pass the MCD seats as they stand, and several weeks from now we talk about ex officio seats having voting rights and end up passing that, then we have 7 members
of cultural
of the cultural centers having voting rights. That's what she's saying, not about when we should be considering something or not, but that they're kind of closely tied. The problem is you have to draw the line that you can't table the discussion about MCD centers to another time. We have to pass this. So that's like the problem.
That would be.
Thank you,
Pass
Dan.
this,
Yeah.
and you give the application of voting rights, you have 7.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm just asking that to be considered, like, as we're talking about this, because this is what we're
It's
discussing.
the same thing.
Yes.
The way that MCD senators are laid out right now, and the way that ex officios are laid out,
Will be exact same.
laid out, will be the same exact thing.
Yep.
So,
Thank you, Dan. That was.
so the question is whether that's what MCD seats do?
Yeah, no, I'm just asking, like, how do we factor that in? What does the Senate think about that? How are we going to kind of address that moving forward? I think it's something that needs to be brought up.
The MCD seats
Yes, there are senator seats that, yeah. Another point, is it a point of information or a question?
So I can sit down.
Alright, I'm gonna let Chairperson Canado first speak, and then Senator Baratar has been patiently waiting over there. I'm gonna give her the floor, and then we'll move on to Sullivan. Oh, okay, never mind then.
I would just say, as a matter of procedure, if there is any concern about MCD seats and the way that it affects discussion on ex officios, the only thing up for consideration right now is what's in the election policy and the election package, which does include the MCD seats. So if anybody feels strongly enough to change that, they can motion to do so. But that's kind of the extent of the action that we're taking as far as Robert's Rules of Order allow, and staying on motion. That's perfect to say.
Alright, I'm gonna let President Convoy speak really quickly because she perhaps is gonna provide some more insight.
So if we amend our constitution this year, would it come into effect till next spring? Is that correct? Follow-up question. And if we do these MCD seats this spring, their term would end next spring, so they wouldn't overlap, correct?
Yes,
I'm
because
thinking
they would be with the academic
As long
senators.
as they're effective immediately.
Okay, I was just making sure.
Alright, Senator Sullivan, you yield. Chairperson Byrd, you have anything?
Yes.
Wait, hold on.
Constitution changed last year.
Right, but like, how do we settle on the number?
It was just they thought if we were doing, it was a debate, and they thought if there's 5 ex officio seats specific for each one, then it would only cut down to 2 MCD to then proportionally do the resident. It was all about that zoning thing. So that was what the thought was behind it, from my memory. That was debate last year, so I kind of, like, we've talked about why these 2 seats are weird, and but that was the debate last year, it was passed. Yeah.
So my question is, I guess I'm really not understanding about the MCD senators, the letter of recommendation, because it's not in the Constitution, it's not in the bylaws, and it's not in these policies. Where did that come from, and why is it being discussed? Because it's not in anything that that's being considered. So I guess that's
So that was under the direction of the executive committee. So I would have to yield to someone in the business that motion. So
President Convoy.
No, it's not. So here's the issue. I'll say that was from my memory, that was in the legislation. No one ever printed the legislation last year, and it's gone. And it's not written in the bylaws or constitution, so I don't know if we can even count that as a thing anymore because no one ever actually put it in the bylaws or printed the legislation.
So, okay, so this is a clarification question. If we pass the policies as they stand, the MCD senators could be anyone on campus, could run for those seats. The election is campus-wide. There's no letter of recommendation from the cultural center, meaning you don't have to be a participant in the cultural center, and they would have voting rights. Am I correct in that?
as far as I currently understand, yes.
Thank you.
Yep. I would like to, while no one has the floor, again, motion to table consideration of MCD seats until we get the definitive order, because it seems like we haven't gotten that yet. I would just like to make sure that if I'm making comments about election policy, that I'm fully informed. So I motion to do that.
I'm going to step down for a second and give Deputy Speaker the floor.
Is there a second
Yeah.
to that motion?
MCD seats until we have a definitive word. I just don't like making all these comments about what it is without having the facts. So,
I'll give the second to Burr.
consent. Consideration. Answer.
Can we do that by unanimous consent? Okay. So,
May I motion to recess for 5 minutes because we have members of the body who are not able to participate in the conversation about everything else because we're So give them a chance to figure out.
there is a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second by Sponzo. Are there any questions on the motion?
it's not debatable. Motion to recess.
5 minutes? All right, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against say nay. Abstentions? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Chair to the speaker.
Just overthrown me right there. Yeah. So Chief Justice Riff is going to clarify a little bit more on Senator Sullivan's question and kind of what we've been debating, questioning, trying to figure out the past 20 minutes. Chief Justice Riff.
Good evening, everybody. I have just received an updated bill from last year, to my knowledge, with the authors, Vice President Adam and President Rachel Convoy. It reads, whereas in the spring of 2014, undergraduate student government constitution was amended, and multicultural and diversity seats eliminated for seat restructuring while ex officio seats were increased. Whereas it is the mission of the university to promote diversity and inclusion, whereas the ex officio members will provide a more specific voice for each cultural center, but not a vote. Whereas the Cultural Center at the University of Connecticut represents a large number of students who should be represented with a vote as well as a voice. Therefore, be it resolved, the undergraduate student government hereby adopts the proposed amendment to the Constitution. Article 2, Section 9, up to 10 ex officio non-voting seats may be filled each year by nomination of the student body president and confirmation by a majority vote of the Senate. 5 of these seats shall be reserved for the Rainbow Center, African American Cultural Center, Women's Center, Asian American Center, and Puerto Rican and Latin American Center. The president shall consult with the director of each cultural center and student leaders to gain a better understanding of who would be best to represent each cultural center by the end of each spring semester for the following academic year. Be it further resolved, the undergraduate student government hereby adopts the proposed amendment to the Constitution, Article 2, Section 6. Constituencies for the undergraduate student senate shall be determined by residential zones and academic schools and colleges, and 2 seats will be reserved for multicultural and diversity senators. Be it finally resolved, bylaw 17, Section 7, for the multicultural and diversity seats, candidates must provide the Elections Oversight Committee with a letter from a cultural center director providing evidence of active participation in at least 1 center. This legislation last year was passed, so there should be no debate as to the 2 open seats for the MCD positions.
So as originally stated, we'll be continuing with the friendly amendment on the page of the open positions that reads that candidates current for MCDC must submit a letter of recommendation from the Yukon Cultural Center along with the documents required under election policy.
Yes, Senator Sponson.
Okay, so but does having a letter of recommendation from the cultural center is not basically saying that they have to be from the cultural center, which really is from the Constitution, right? It says that if you get a letter of recommendation from the cultural center, they'll be a member of the cultural center.
Is that a question to me or?
That was just a question in general.
Well, from what I can answer, I would just say that part of it just comes from an MCD seat and an ex officio seat being very different, partially because one is not voting and the other is voting, and also because MCD seats need to be filled in spring elections, whereas an ex officio seat can be filled at any time. So there's a key differences. I'm also going to give a demand tab on my shoulder.
Yeah.
So there's technically no members of cultural centers. What the
Chairperson Byrd?
Is that not mean that, so this is Seth's question, what is it? Does that not mean that the Constitution says that anybody can run? But that's not true. You have to be a member of at least one, not that you have to be involved, you have to be cooperative, but that goes against what the Constitution says. Because it says that anybody can run. And that's not true.
The Constitution says to refer to the bylaws and stipulations on how the cultural center directors are elected.
And as far as we're concerned, this piece of legislation that we have in front of us, which we passed, that's the only bylaw that speaks to it.
So is that legislation that Alex read amend bylaws?
Yes. Yes, since we did pass it, yes, it amended the bylaws. It's just there's a lack of records to ensure that our bylaws are correct because of some administrative issues from last year. All right, are there any other questions? All right, thank you, Chairperson. Oh, you can stay anyways. All right, we'll now move into debate. Would anyone like to debate the first part of the split question?
So this is only on the first enactment clause.
Yes. All right, Chairperson Byrd.
So this point is about the MCD senators. I'm concerned, as I stated earlier, that I didn't want to consider, I agree with not considering the voting rights ex officio tonight. However, if we pass this as a body and give the MCD senators, put them in there with a letter of recommendation from the cultural centers, effectively making them an involved member, and they have to be involved in the cultural center.
They're established already.
But, so are you saying there's no big
There is nothing we can do. It's not. Yeah, they're already established. All right. Sorry. Vice President Kugler. President Kamala.
You know those moments where you look back and you think, we effed up? That's one of those moments, and that's one of the reasons why I always hesitate with constitutional changes now. As a North, there was multiple things that made this implementation and passing really convoluted and really unfair to a lot of parties. And I think that's why it's so important we have structural ad hoc and ad hoc to look specifically at how we represent diversity in our board, because it's such an important issue, because it's been something that we've done by passing legislation and doing fixes. I think we need to look at our organization as a whole, look at our documents. And then the fact that no one's ever updated our constitutional bylaws after we passed things last year. These are all really, really bad issues, and I'll take full responsibility as president for where we're at tonight. But the fact is, these things are already passed in the Constitution. We're going to create these ad hocs, and we're going to start emailing people out tomorrow. They're actually in my report. But I just want to get so that these pass now. So that's where I'm at.
I'd also like to echo the sentiment that I should have been more thorough about this over the summer, and I apologize that you guys did not receive the correct constitution and bylaws when you guys joined this organization. Would anyone else like to be recognized for debate? All right, seeing none, we'll move into a vote considering just the highlight portion. No, just the enactment clause.
On everything in the packet right now.
Yes. No. This is just on the first. Yes. This is just on the first enacting clause. Wait. Yes. We never actually tabled the other part. we motion to split the question, then we're just we never actually tabled the first part to be behind the second part. We took it from the table when we put the MCD seats back onto the discussion. Is there anything?
There's, I think there's one thing about, it's not a packet itself.
Yes.
And I think that
Okay. Okay, but we're clear that this is the packet and not the bylaws afterwards. Okay. Is there any more debate on the packet? Yes.
Does the packet go up on the screen?
What's the packet?
Packet up on the screen for
Yes. Sarah Goebel, looked like you wanted to say something. Yes, I sent this one to you guys. You all. Would anyone like to be recognized for debate? Senator Harris. Okay, is there a second? Second by Murray. Okay. Okay. Is there a second? All right, Senator Murray with a second. Are there any questions? Yes, Chairperson Byrd.
why not also change the concept?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, by unanimous consent, can we modify it to include the comptroller? Okay. Can you specify the numbers, Senator Harris? Okay. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move into debate. Is there any debate regarding this amendment? Yes. Chairperson Combinato.
We looked at the numbers for finances for a couple weeks in a row. We touched on, all the topics and debated them, and came to the final proposal that we were going to stick with the reduction of 300 and 150. It could be at 400, and you could argue why not 500. It could be at 600, you could argue why not 700. We don't think that there's any precedent that somebody needs more than $300. I mean, we had no spending cap in a contested election from a couple years ago, someone only spent $150. We just don't think that it's up. Yeah.
So should that not be considered evidence for public funding? As evidence that people don't spend $300?
This is debate and no longer a point of information, but.
Point of information has to be much for the chair. So.
My question is, why is that evidence? As long as
I have the floor, so.
I will yield to to Chairperson Cognado about this question.
Once you have a number, you can't just magically have another number. You have to increase or decrease the number you currently have. That's the way that works. So we said, well, is there a precedent for someone last year who was a candidate spending up to $400? It didn't really seem like it was even a question. It just didn't seem like the required option ever to spend that much money. And when you look at students who are looking at our candidates who are out there spending that campaign money, you can just get 250 signatures at $400 to spend on a campaign. I just don't. I understand, the hesitance to change certain things or to lower the numbers. No presidential campaign is going to be crippled with $100 and less spending when they have $300 to spend, 500 copies to be made at the Student Organization Center. I just don't see the need to keep it at 400. That is a decrease. It's not a drastic decrease. We don't think. We thought it was a very reasonable proposal. So that's my position.
All right. Any other debate? Yes, Senator Harris. important information about the amount they spent.
Park isn't here. I think, Rachel, do you have the number on that? That it hasn't been more than 150 for the last 3 years, 4 years?
Oh, I don't have the number off the top of my head. I don't know.
All right, we'll move on.
Safe, but I was not sure.
All right, we'll move on. Senator Goebel.
I also don't see a reason why we would change the number, because if I like recall correctly from caucus, we talked about how Rachel is the only president in an election should use public funding for her campaign, right? And so if we're considering past campaigns where they've been spending their personal finances, I just don't see that as evidence for lowering the number. And I'm just curious as to why we have to lower the number at all. Like, why are we changing it? Is there like a budget issue? Am I like missing some sort of information here?
Well, thank you, Senator Goebel. This is a debate, so thank you for your piece. Senator Lee.
I think the point being made is that in an unopposed election, would it have to be this way? So if in past campaigns, the people that have personal resources, that would play a role. And so for the first election to be unopposed election, people didn't need as much money. In past elections, they had these personal resources, and so that would impact how much they would be able to, how much access they had to the money.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Sullivan.
I get this concern for campaign quality, but the USG power determine what campaign items are being reflected on campaign expenses that would coerce selection. And second point being that we're enhancing housing use. I think that kind of mitigates the effect of people hiring more money. At the same time, it doesn't limit free speech. Is that your view? Or do you answer that way?
I can't answer that because I'm a chair. But I can yield to Senator Gugnado.
I mean, we're not a question period, but if you wanted to remove public campaign finance or campaign finance through the USG, then after this amendment, whether it goes up or down, you would have to make an amendment to cover this section on public finance. Or that would be, because we're currently in debate on the motion on this amendment to increase.
Chairperson Porcello.
I know I talked about this earlier with Chairperson Byrd, but I think that I would be supportive of even more public financing. I think it's awesome advertising for USG and saying, look, we exist within this school, we have candidates running for office, and you're going to hear about it. And the more money we fund, hopefully the more that students at this university hear about it. And if they see that we have more candidates running for office, maybe the next time they have a problem, they're going to come to USG and try and get it fixed. Even if it's not the candidate's poster they saw, it's just a constant reminder that USG is here and here to help students. So when I went up there and we passed $1.3 million today for funding board, and we're debating $100 right now, which is fine. You know, of course, it's fiscally responsible, but I think this is $100 and $50 for comptroller that is well spent, and I really think we should keep the old amounts.
I'm an old man and have back problems, so I'm going to stand for a little bit. Senator Sponzo.
I mean, you can go for that microphone. You can stand up and speak. It's very loud.
So my only concern with this portion of the legislation is that we are changing this policy without giving the already Senate approved policy a chance to actually work, because we had an uncontested election last year, and because we haven't had presidential elections for this year, why wouldn't we allow this policy to go into effect if this was something that Senate has so recently approved? Changing it without kind of a discussion within Senate, I think, doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Also, just to second what Chairperson Porcello said, I think that if we're going to spend money on something, and realistically $100 to this organization is not going to make a big difference in our budget, if we're going to spend money on something, putting it towards having effective elections and elections that are going to be well-run and properly funded, I think, is a very good use of our money, and $100 will not make that much of a difference in our overall budget. That's my piece. Thank you.
Parliamentarian Lisi.
There were a lot of documents, so I decided to get a different view back there. So when this number was decided last year, it is to my knowledge that Ms. Himes did research to about 10 different universities. She reached out to them and she came up with that number. It was the 300. And so with that being said, I think she did a lot of research. Our new EOC chairperson, Bennett, agreed with her, and we're trying to try out this new policy, like what Steph said, like in an actually like now a race. So I think we should kind of just go with her research.
It was
the higher amount.
It was the higher?
Yeah, we recommended the 400 and the 200. This policy lowers that.
Wait, but I thought you just said that.
No. Wait, Mike's a kid here.
So what actually happened was that Chairperson Himes
Chairperson Bird, can you please sit down? Can you just sit down for a second?
I yield to Dan Bird.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. So what happened was last year, Chairperson.
So what happened last year was Chairperson Himes recommended the $300. I proposed an amendment for $500. My reasoning last year was that I think the more money we spend on elections, the more outreach we have, yada, yada, yada. Senate came to a compromise, amended my amendment to go to $400. That's where the $400 number came from. It was Chairperson Himes 300. I suggested 500. The Senate decided 400. That has yet to be implemented effectively. So I'm not going to debate because that's not appropriate at this time. But I'm saying that's where the 400 number came from.
Great. Thank you, Chairperson Bird. Would anyone else like to debate? Yes, Chairperson Ignata. You already went.
I mean, I stick by the proposal that was approved by my committee. I think when you talk about increasing $100 and it having some huge effect on the outreach of USG, I think that's misguided. I think someone that there's a campaign that has a ticket, that has a roster of people that are campaigning them, they get a large amount of photocopies for all their materials, and you know, $300, that's enough to run a presidential campaign. I don't think an extra $100 is going to, you know, if someone gets $300, oh gosh, I don't know if I can even campaign now that there's $100 less. It's managing that money more efficiently. We could be at a 400 number right now and have someone argue it should be 500. I just don't think that it needs to be $400, and the committee didn't either. That committee includes the comptroller of our organization. I also just kind of want to speak a little bit to our process here. You know, this is obviously policy that has to be approved by the Senate, but what we're seeing right now is legislation that was crafted and presented by people who don't have any stake in election results or election policy, looking objectively weeks on weeks on weeks about policy, the way it affects students. And now we're doing policy proposals, and they're being largely debated and changed by people, frankly, who are likely going to be running for those offices. So let's try and consider a little bit about, you know, I mean, I can't tell anyone to debate or not to debate, but I think that it's kind of folly to have a committee look at this 6 months and come and say, well, you know, let's change the responsibility, let's get some other voices, if we're talking about the election policy, and let's be real about what $100 really is going to do to make or break USG's outreach efforts.
All right, because we've been debating this for a while, I'm going to limit the discussion on regards to this budget for 10 more minutes. Guys, you have to remember, we still have to go over the bylaw changes. This is just about the enactment of the packet. All right, Senator Burr was first.
In terms of increasing it to $400 and to $200, I don't think it's the right thing to do because there are other ways you can do student outreach in a very cheap manner. I know, like,
when you walk in Fairfield Way, not a lot of students are going to like stop by and try to talk to the candidates. They're just going to walk right through. I think it's a better way to do it through social media, which is a much cheaper way to do it. And I did my entire campaign through social media, and I didn't have to ask anyone for any funding whatsoever. So it's very cheap, and it's much more efficient if we're going to connect with the students that are shifting to this new medium.
Thank you, Senator Burr. Senator Lavoie.
Someone who's definitely not running for any of these positions. I love the fact that we're putting out more money to help these students campaign. It's just going to put USG's name all over campus for a longer period of time at a greater amount. I love that it's going to promote the outreach of this organization. So that's why I think we should increase the funds.
Senator Gnado.
Point of order is the fact that you can't use USG branded merchandise campaign. No. You can't do merchandise. They're going to be getting their names out there, not necessarily just USG things.
Okay, guys, out of order. Senator Murray.
I would just like to echo some of the previous sentiments expressed by some people that money spent on presidential and vice presidential elections is some of the most widespread publicity that USG gets. The majority of people at this university do not hear about USG except twice a year, and those 2 times are during election periods. And of course, the biggest election we have is the election for student body president. So I think if we're going to spend a small amount of money to get our image spread wider, then presidential and comptroller elections are one of the best places to do it. And I also think that we should give time for the numbers that the Senate arrived at last year of $400 and $200 to take effect and to see how much of that money is actually spent in a contested election before we change them again.
Thank you, Senator Murray. Senator Sullivan. Chairperson Byrd.
So I'd like to touch on some points that haven't been brought up yet. I agree with Senator Murray, but I'm not going to repeat those things. First, a couple, Chairperson Gnado said that it's only $100. That's not going to do much outreach. It's actually $100 per ticket. So we're talking about $100 per ticket. If there's 2 tickets, that's $200. If there's 3 tickets, that's $300. So it's not $100, just to keep that in mind. Secondly, I think the role of EOC in shaping election policies is to look at what's a problem and fix those problems. There's no problem here that's being fixed. They're taking a non-issue and changing it for no reason. And there's no evidence that's been proposed as to why this should be reduced, other than the committee thought so. So this isn't an issue, so why are we being changed? Thirdly, this was proposed to us at caucus last week as a fiscal responsibility issue, that we need to cut the funding because we have budget problems. But again, this is like, we're talking like $300-400 a year max. Like, that's a fallacy that this is blowing our budget or this is a fiscal responsibility issue. Lastly, I don't like the fact that we bring up that EOC spent months and months and months and months and months looking at the policies and changing them. And yeah, sure, they did a lot of work, and I'm sure they have reasons for doing a lot of the things they did. But then if we should just be passing them blindly, then why bother bringing them to Senate? So it's Senate's right, if you guys want to change the policies, to change the policies, whether they spend a year, 10 years working on the policies. We tonight can change the policies, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
Thank you, Chairperson Byrd. Would anyone else like to be recognized for debate? Seeing none, we'll move into a vote. This is just to approve the amendment that Senator Karras proposed about increasing the budgets for each ticket to $400 and $200. The president and vice president to $400 and the comptroller to $200. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? 5 abstentions. And clearly passes. We'll now move back into debate about the first question that was split on the packet. Would anyone else like to be recognized for debate? This is the packet, guys. Going once, going twice? Okay. We'll now move into a vote. All those in favor of enacting the first, the first enactment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? 5 abstentions again, and clearly passes. Thanks. Yeah, we can clap, guys. That was fun. All right, we'll now move into questions in regarding all the bylaw changes that we have yet to pass. Put it up there. So it's everything from the be it further enacted and down. Are there any questions? Yes.
At this point, everything needs a 2/3 vote?
Yes. Oh, sorry. That's a great point. Since there are bylaw changes, they need to be approved by a 2/3 vote, and hopefully I can do math this time because it's kind of important. Thanks for giving me that. Thanks. Thanks, Cassandra. All right. Would anyone like to be recognized for questions? This is on all the rest of the document, guys. Can you... Yes, Senator Berger.
For the bylaw 10, section 7, no person for a certain election posting will be eligible to run for election. If that's the case, how come we have senators that are in the election?
This is questions for you because it's back to
No one who's on. Yeah, no one who's on the committee will be running. So no one who, yeah.
We're all graduating
That's
this year.
fine, as long as they're not running again.
Are there any other questions? Listen, seeing none, we'll move into debate. Would anyone like to be recognized for debate? Ooh, interesting. No? Alright, we'll move into a vote. All those in favor of approving the remainder of the enactments afterwards from what we just voted, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? 7 abstentions. And passes. Alright, we will now move into reports. President Convoy.
Right, okay guys, so, here's a couple notes, also kind of quick correction. The bottom 2 things Steven said was bylaw changes, actually the bottom 2 were actually constitutional changes, just to clarify and try that kind of move quickly. But for my work, I'll be creating a couple ad hocs. The structural ad hoc looking at USG as a whole will be formed at the end of this semester, and then use winter break to research different ideas. Then we're also going to look at doing ad hoc specifically how we represent diversity and how our relationship with the cultural center should be and what that should look like. So I'm going to send out emails. I'm going fast because I think that there's more important things that need to be said. But those ad hocs will be formed. So if you're really passionate about any of these changes, or just in general, how USG should look and how representation should look, let's see if we can get those are ridiculous. Excuse me, that's an awful idea. Talk to me. Let's make some changes and let's make it work. Secondly, there's another committee I'll be forming, recess committee. Winter break, if you're around, message me. They'll be doing a lot of funding. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions for President Convoy? Yes, Senator Sponzo.
I think it says in the Constitution like once a month, but we're going to talk once we have goals for it. We haven't outlined exactly everything we'll be working on. So if you have any ideas too for what we should do with it.
Are you having like once a week, once every other week, like how generally
Once every other week. I don't know. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, but that's something that if there's depending on what goals we set for the recess committee, that'll dictate that.
Because there are like housing and travel and other options we need to consider. Any other questions for President Convoy? Alright, seeing none, we'll move into, thank you President Convoy, we'll move into the report of the Vice President Kugler.
The first thing I want to just say quickly is that being EOC chair is a ton of work. I'm sure you realize that by the amount of changes that went. And Ben did a great job.
Stephen.
So Ben did a great great job with that. I just want to. The other thing is that Bennett really, and not every chair does this, not every chair needs to do this, but I thought it was great, is that Bennett really valued the involvement of his committee at each step of the process, tried to keep everybody involved, and try to get a consensus, so great job to Bennett on that. Okay, so for everybody who went ice skating, thank you for coming. I had a great time. I hope people that went had a great time. If you didn't come, look at the picture. Dustin even had a great time. Yes. For anybody who didn't go, look at the picture on the Facebook group. You can see everybody having a great time. Come to the next membership event. The banquet, save the date. It's should be December 4th, Friday, December 4th. So I know some people might have additional questions about details. Mostly because I'm not giving you any right now, but in the official invitation email, you will get all the details. You should have gotten an email from me today about Huskython. Please sign up. That's a really great event where we can raise money for children and families at the Connecticut Children's Medical Center. Anybody who's done it can attest to it being a great event, so please join our team and raise money, help us reach our goal. And then U21 dates have been set for April 6th through 8th, 2016. That's it.
Any questions for Vice President Kugler? Thank you, Vice President Kugler. We'll now move into the report of the speaker. Well, guys, 10:05. It's a long one. Thank you all for sticking through it. That was some great debate. We kind of got a little edgy, but you know, it was good that you guys attacked the ideas. You wanted to discuss, you wanted to debate. That's what a Senate is all about, and I'm really happy with the involvement we had today. I think I said like 3 names today that I've never said before as like Senator so-and-so, so that makes me really happy. As Senator Sullivan did bring up, we still haven't done the Senate, well, I haven't done the Senate rules and procedures, and so we're going to spend next caucus on it, because I am uncomfortable with making the decisions on how you guys act in Senate without your input. Because there's so many of you, you all have very different thoughts on it and very different ideas of what business casual or business professional might mean. So I really want to spend the time and actually define it so we can get, you know, rules and procedures that you can all agree upon and all are clearly informed on, so there won't be issues next semester. I'm sorry it took so long. It's just caucuses have been filling up with more important things, and I felt the need that we need to do other things before we move into this. Oh, I have some good news for you guys. Your Senator logins are ready for the office, so you can use the computers. I'll be sending out an email later, not tonight, I have an exam at 9 a.m. tomorrow that I have to study for, but afterwards. I will send out an email with the net IDs, how to log into them, and then also I'll be sending out, hopefully, if Director Diglu and I can finally get together and put some questions together for you guys to answer. And I'll add your name as one of the questions.
Are there any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, we move into the report of the comptroller.
Comptroller Rana is gone. I think you would say good job to all of you because he just says it after a long Senate. All right, we'll move into the report of academic affairs. Chairperson Gopal. Looking good. I like the khaki blazer.
Please, I'm blushing. Whoever's after me to just start walking up here because I want to, let's keep this short. So we're having our town hall event next Thursday, 5 to 7, Ag Affairs Town Hall. We're trying to gauge people's opinions on academics here. Hopefully we can guide our next few initiatives, and yeah, basically that's it.
Hey y'all. So,
I told all of you that our movie night was going to be December 4th. Now that the banquet is going to be that day, we're moving it to the 11th, so don't fret, you can still come to the movie.
Yay!
Any questions? What movie is it? Oh, it's going to be Monsters University. Awesome. Okay, we'll now move into the report of Funding Board. Chairperson Purcell.
I would like to nominate Dustin Fowler to Funding Board.
Would the nominee please stand?
I represent the nominee.
Okay. Any questions? Does the nominee accept their position?
Yes, he does.
All right, any questions?
Dustin Fowler, or as I refer to him as New Dustin.
Any questions for the, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a sophomore in the business school. He started coming to meetings, was interested, and he submitted his application to me. Seems like a good guy. So.
Any other questions for the nominee? Any debate? We'll move to the vote on the approval of.
Dustin Fowler.
All those in favor of approving this nominee, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention. All right, clearly approved.
Just so you guys know, if anyone asks, we approved the budgets tonight, and next Tuesday, Funding Board is going to send them out to all the groups, and that's when they can begin work on their funding requests for the spring. So just so you all know what's going on there.
Are there any questions for Chairperson Priscilla? All right, can we also give a round of applause to the Funding Board and all the good work they're doing? I will now move into the report of Student Development, Chairperson Valverde.
Everything's in limbo, we're working hard, and the filming for the We Are You video is Friday from 9 to 1. So if you want to be in it, let your girl know.
Any questions for the girl? All right, seeing none, we'll move into the report of Student Services, Chairperson Conrad.
Cindy Duku and I went to the Student Welfare Committee tonight. We are doing a lot of work with them on different initiatives, especially campus safety. If you have any questions, let us know. The only thing I'm going to report is that the Sustainability Subcommittee has been established. Our members are Nicole DeFelice, Cameron Mitchell, Karen Keener, who are all members of the coalition, Colin Eng, and Tim Sullivan. So if you want to get involved in that, please let me know.
Actually, it's Corinne Kinnear. Yeah, I went to high school with her. Are there any questions for Chairperson Conrad? All right, seeing none, we'll move into announcements. Anyone have any announcements? Yes, Cassandra Puglisi. Parliamentarian Puglisi.
All right, as we know, Roma Romanov is Ukraine, and the Ukrainian Student Association is having a movie showing about a documentary about the crisis in Ukraine. I suggest you all go to it. It's Monday, what month are we in? November 16th at 6 in the Dodd Center, the Conover Dodd Center, and it's called Winter on Fire. I suggest you all go to it. Also, great job today. I know it was long. Thank you so much for staying. For those of you who did, if they didn't stay and you know somebody who did, tell them they're in trouble. Not really. That's all.
Alright, would anyone else like to be recognized for announcements? Yes, Chairperson Gignado. And Senator Gignado. Chairperson / Senator Gignado.
So sorry to cut off from the back-to-back kind of speed of that. But I did want to just give a quick announcement at the end to just apologize to anyone who talked to me about it, or any of my friends from the cultural centers about the ex officio bylaw or constitution change just kind of being removed in the 11th hour. It was something that we talked about a lot, and I think that it is a really big change. And I'm glad that we were able to take the time that we did tonight to hash out some of the other concerns that people had with other legislation and other parts of elections policy. I wouldn't have wanted us to only now be getting to the issue of ex officio voting rights. It was kind of decided at the last minute that we would take it out just because there didn't seem like there would be enough time tonight to make that happen. And that it perhaps wasn't in the purview of the EOC to make that kind of unilateral suggestion for that change from the Senate. I still think it's a great idea. I thought it was a great idea when we first proposed it, and I think it was an even better idea when we changed it to make it more democratic after the first caucus. So that's something I'm going to be talking to Rachel about and trying to make sure that this policy is something that we consider going forward when we restructure the organization. But I did want to make sure that everyone was fully aware of that and how that came to be. And if anybody feels like they didn't get the chance to talk about that or that was done in a way that it shouldn't have been, I apologize. And I look forward to having discussions about it going forward. So.
Thank you, Chairperson Gignado. Before we adjourn, I'd like to take away Senator Kennedy's speaking range. She's wearing rain boots. All right, we will now adjourn at 10:12. Well, she's wearing heels for most of it, and then she decided to change, so she wants to get out of here. I like the rain boots, though. Exactly, we still have our emergency meeting in SOC, so let's head.